Howdy, folks. Episode 13, Future Motocross Radio, coming to you from the Legends Room here in Central Florida. Got some fine folks with us today. We've got our man, Mr. Sugar Shane, our co-host with this.
We're back.
I'm your host, RJ Huss, and we've got some awesome guests with us lined up. We've got a couple people who know something about a dirt bike there. Mr. Scott Meshey.
Just a little bit.
How you doing?
I'm doing great. About yourself?
Good, man. Good. Mr. Cole Bradford.
Good. Happy to be here.
The addition to the Future MX HPI Racing program, and then we have Mr. HPI Racing himself, Mr. Matt Bell.
It's good to be here. I appreciate the invite.
Absolutely, man. It's great to have all you guys here. There's so much going on to talk about between, what you guys, the three of you, have all had some type of relationship or connection before, and obviously, Cole coming on board this week. It's got some big changes in your program that we get to talk about and kind of go in depth with. But episode 13, off and rolling here. I want to say a huge thank you to Mr. Matt Bell and the HPI Racing. We got the title sponsor with them on this episode, and as far as the title sponsor of the team as well, and then also Step Up MX Custom Graphics and Decals. We've got some special stuff that's going to be coming out here in the next week or two that we can share. We put a little teaser of it on our Instagram today.
You did?
Yeah, we can't disclose all the goods just yet, but we've got a photo shoot coming up, and we're going to release them. But, man, Step Up MX working hard for us, Troy, Wes, and the boys, and looking forward to getting that done. Got a new number here for the Mr. Cole Bradford and Aiden. Kind of get going, but man, I just kind of want to dive in here a little bit. Scott, truthfully for me, didn't know you really personally, and it seems like the more and more people I talk to you, I don't know how, we haven't known each other longer or closer. I mean, Zephyr Hills is where you're from, right?
I mean, I'm originally from Pennsylvania.
Okay.
But I've been in Zephyr Hills for quite a few years, since like 2014.
Okay.
So I've been around Florida for quite a while, but I kind of, it's funny. I feel like I've integrated into Florida, but I also, still kind of feel like that guy that's come to Florida.
Florida man.
I mean, to be honest,
You're like me. I've came here.
Yeah,
because I'm from California. So
okay.
I'm still not a Florida native.
Headline.
I mean, honestly, the longer that I'm in Florida, the more I feel like a Florida man.
Yeah.
It just kind of grows on you.
So talk about that, though. I didn't know that. You grew up, you said Pennsylvania?
Yeah, I grew up in the Northeast, and, it was just kind of there. And I was working with Tim Ferry a bit. I started working with Tim, kind of on and off, would come down like during winter months and stuff like that. Only be able to come down for like a couple weeks at a time, stuff like that. And that's kind of how I started, coming down. And
you were working for Tim Ferry when he was racing?
Well, working with him, training. He was training.
Oh, training.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. So I was working with him and started that in like 2012, and kind of was getting more and more involved down here, and just kind of ended up down here in Florida full time, in around the 2014 area.
So, you grew up racing up there, though?
Yeah.
I mean, when did you first get on a dirt bike?
I was first on a dirt bike, 4 years old, like a lot of guys. And I'm trying to think. Yeah, I started a little bit on P-Dub, and then I quickly transitioned to the KTM Junior.
Got it.
And I looped it out.
Nice.
First ride, and
I still do that to this day.
Honestly, I feel like we've all done it. I've done it recently, but thankfully I didn't break the rear fender off. So I feel like I'm making progress.
Oh yeah. Step in the right direction.
Exactly. So yeah, I kind of have my origins in the Northeast area. And I, have kind of transplanted to Florida, and have been down here for a while, and, kind of transitioned, a little bit more into being here in Florida and training here in Florida. And, have made this area my home, and, have had, recently changed and kind of my home base is now in Ohio, but I still, train down here and stuff for Supercross. It's a bit cold up there.
Yeah, got it. Well, let's talk a little bit about some of that amateur stuff. I mean, did you have, like, I know you said you got on the bike at 4 years old. Yep. I mean, did you jump right in and, man, I'm going to Loretta's at 5 years old? Or, I mean, did you kind of go into it slow and then just kind of grew? Or, I mean,
I feel like it was slow.
Okay.
My family didn't really know much about like the amateur national scene. And we just kind of did like local area stuff and, just started expanding little by little. And then all of a sudden you hear like, hey, like, we're going to Minios. And you're like, oh, well, what's Minios? And then that was, started going to Minios. And that was my first ever national, was coming down to Minios when I was on like 50s or 65s. And then all of a sudden people are talking about, oh, well, you got to go to Loretta's, because I think I top 10'd, at Minios, and all of a sudden people are like, well, you should go to Loretta's. You should try out for Loretta's.
Right.
And what's funny is like, you don't know unless you know, or unless someone tells you like about the whole like system of how that works. And for like the longest time, for quite a few years, initially trying for Loretta's, I would always have like that one moto that would like totally flunk you out. So I would go like 2:36.2, at a regional. Yeah. But nobody ever told us about like the whole alternate thing. So like there probably were plenty of times that I could have gone in as an alternate on like little bikes. But my first time ever getting to Loretta's was in 2009, I believe, 2008 or 2009. And I was on a Cobra 65, and I was actually working with the guys at Cobra to help develop the Cobra 65.
Yeah. Who was that?
I was working with a gentleman named Phil and Sean at Cobra, the guys who really were running the program and were running the amateur team.
I was going to say, back in the day before that time, it would have been Bud Mamone.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah, I had a Bud bike a long time ago. Of course, everybody had them, and then we showed up to like Branson, Missouri for the national that used to be there years ago, and then all of a sudden you started seeing these Bud bikes, and then they were literally like smoking the crap out of everyone, and you're like, what's a Bud bike? And then all of a sudden the word you get in the know, and then you get yourself one, and then all of a sudden, there you go.
How did you get mixed up in Cobra? As a young kid, was you like dad into racing? Do you know people, or how do they even work out?
Actually, it's kind of a funny story. I mean, starting off riding, my dad rode trails and kind of rode in the hills and stuff like that. Up in the Northeast, nothing really serious, just for the sake of fun. And he went to pro nationals. My parents went to pro nationals and stuff like that, and that's kind of how they got really into that side of things. Mm-hmm. And then when my siblings were born, they went to those same races, and they started riding. My older brothers started riding before I was ever even born. So by the time I was born, I just kind of went right into it, and I just kind of took it a bit more seriously and, pursued it a bit more. But I'm not exactly sure how, we got Phil at Cobra's phone number, but I just remember, one of my brothers saying like, you should just call them and just see if they would be willing to help. You're like, you've done well at amateur nationals, you've qualified for Loretta's, why not just call and see what they can do, see about doing Ponca and Loretta's and see what they can do to help. And I kid you not, this was like literally like a cold sales call. And they were like, well, shoot, we'll just bring him on to the team if he's willing to help with, riding the bike and helping, to develop a new bike. And that was that. I actually was able to, I think probably like a week or two later, 2 Cobras showed up in a semi and were unloaded at my house. And I was able to, work with those guys at Ponca and at Loretta's. And I ended up transitioning out of 65, so I kind of wasn't really able to stay with them. But that was like I said, just straight up cold sales call. It was really, really cool.
Nice.
And Phil is a really good guy. And Sean, who is a part of that and helps run that, was really, really gracious and helping me to understand that bike and be able to help to develop that, to what they, started to become.
So your brother talked you into becoming your own agent.
No. See, I was not the one that called. No. See, I do that. I do that now. I do that now, but not back then.
Oh, okay.
So, where were you riding at up there? You're talking about in the northeastern area.
So I was. I'm from southeastern Pennsylvania. So a lot of the tracks that I would go to, like Sleepy Hollow, Flying Dutchman. There's places kind of all around. There's, when it would get colder, you would kind of go a little bit down to Virginia. over towards Delaware, Maryland, stuff like that. Blue Diamond was a place that went to a lot, but never really. I mean, I was not at training facilities or anything like that. Like, for the longest time, I mean, shoot, even into, like super minis, like I was truly like riding once, maybe twice a week. And then like during the winter, I would be able to like, maybe we would come down for like minios and we would be here like the week before minios and like ride for the week at like Skytop. Right. And then, you go and race minios. And other than that, that was pretty much that. And then, during the summers, we would go up into New York and race at like Broome Tioga, which is still one of my favorite tracks to this day. Right. Aside from the rocks, but go up there, Area 51, just try to race some different places. So that's kind of where I was at, until I really started branching out. And, in super minis, that was a kind of a big stepping stone for me. I started getting a bit of recognition from the guys at Verb Moto, because I went and did a Verb Classic race at Echikani. Right. And really got a good amount of exposure there. I got recognized with the Race Tech Most Shocking Performance Award. And so Race Tech, for the following year, set me up with suspension, stuff like that. And, going into 125s and stuff like that, that really helped a lot because I didn't ever have any like set up suspension. It was always whatever came on the bike that we bought, or whoever's bike it was before mine, you just set the sag and that's it.
Learn how to ride it.
Listen, you run what you brung and that was that, there was no.
I still do that to this day.
Hey, you know what? Sometimes it works. You just are like, look, I know that it's not perfect and I'm just going to run it anyway. And it just takes the pressure off,
Yeah.
Was there ever a point in your amateur career to where you're like, this is what I want to do? Because when you're a kid, you're having fun at the races with your, your buddies and your parents. But was there ever a point where like, oh, this is kind of getting serious?
Honestly, I feel like when I finally made it to Loretta's and I got that kind of experience. Yeah. And my first experience at Loretta's was a rough one. I think I wadded every single moto. And it was definitely a bit of a shock. But when I I feel like once I got into 85s, I feel like I started to kind of prosper a bit. And then especially into super minis, where I started really gaining some like traction and some notoriety. At that point, I really felt like, hey, this is really something. I'm running with top guys. I'm nipping at the heels of top guys. Right. And I'm not at a training facility. I don't have the resources that these guys have. But if I work hard enough and I continue to bust my butt and I continue to get noticed and continue to get support and grow it, you can go and compete with those guys and you can give yourself a shot. And you always strive for the top. You always shoot for the top. And that's the thing is there was always that mindset for me, especially of always wanting to be the best that I can possibly be. So I would definitely say that once I really started getting into the actual amateur nationals and, placing well, I had some top fives, mostly top tens and stuff like that, just because I wasn't as like seasoned as some of the other kids were, I guess, that have been racing, amateur nationals for basically their whole life. Right. So I feel like once I started getting around that, more and more, that's really when I started to really take it seriously. And especially, super minis transitioning into big bikes, you gain notoriety, you gain, the confidence and the knowledge of yourself and, what you need to do to be better. And you get an idea of what your goals are.
Right.
Cullen Park's calling me.
Oh,
that guy.
That guy.
Does he know every Sunday at 2:00 or?
Nah, it's all good.
Should I text him right now and tell him to quit calling?
Before we go on to some of your pro stuff, because I do want to get into that transition, I want to jump over here, Cole, to you and kind of talk about some of your amateur side of
Yeah,
it.
because he's in that transition.
Yeah.
Right now.
Yeah, right now, yeah.
So, I mean, going through some of your amateur stuff, I mean, you're born and raised Florida, right?
Brandon, yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, just outside of Tampa.
And then now you currently live in Tampa,
Yep,
right? Kind of
South
South Tampa area. So, tell me about give me the Cole Bradford amateur rundown. When did you first get on a bike?
So I started when I was 7, which was a little late at the time it seemed like, but it worked out. Like, I mean, I think I made it to Loretta's after riding for 3 years, which was 2012, I think. That was my first year making it to Loretta's. And honestly, we moved pretty fast into it, but like, I mean, my setup was weird. Like, I mean, I raced Dade City. That was where I started.
Your staple.
I was Dade City local for a long time, and it was good. Like I even to this day, like my coolest trophy is from a Dade City championship. It's a full billet #1 plate. Like, it's sick. And everybody around here probably knows about those Dade City banquets. Like, those were legendary back in the day. Like, when those.
I got my jacket from 1986, Dade City Banquet.
Dude, it didn't get any better than a Dade City banquet. Like, back then, you left with gear, like a bicycle, helmets, and you just felt like the best. But so I mean, I was I raced 110s. That's what I started on, like pit bikes basically. But back then, Dade City had a 25 rider 110 gate. I don't know if you remember those days.
I do.
But it was around like when Stars of Tomorrow was big there, and Sponsor Cup, right?
Sponsor Cup.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, like that was. I grew up watching Livesey, Mike Picone, Keelons.
Yeah.
Yep, the 2 Keelon brothers.
Millet.
Ian. Yes. Yep. That's crazy. I haven't thought about him in a long time, but yeah, that's a name I definitely know. So that stuff's cool. Like, looking back on that, and like
That was a fun time, man.
that was where I started. That's like the first memories I have of riding a dirt bike, So I actually won the I don't know, it's like 65cc 7 to 11 or something like that, with a broken arm. I broke my arm mid-year, and I would just finish the motos to keep my points because I had like enough of a lead or whatever. But yeah, Dade City was like the place to be back then. So
where'd you go outside of Dade City though? I mean, when did you start evolving up into?
Well, I mean, like, practice wise, just all around Florida, but I would say I don't know for sure, but I think Minneo's, because it's so close, would probably be where I really was my first big one.
Yeah.
And then from there, like he said, you learn about Loretta's, and those 2 were kind of growing up were the only 2 that I did consistently. Like, I think I did Loretta's 5 or 6 times, 5 times, and usually always Minneo's. Like, I've probably done Minneo's 10 years in a row.
Yeah.
And sorry. But other than that, those were the 2 that I did. Like, I wasn't a kid that was going to like 7 major events a year.
Yeah. We talked about that on the episode last week.
Yeah.
I mean, those 2 are probably the most prestigious. I mean, obviously you've got to go through the area and regional process to get into, Loretta's, but even Minneo's, I mean, it's the single largest amateur motocross race in the world. So, I mean, it's huge. I mean, but those 2 carry a lot of weight. I feel like that is a double-edged sword. I mean, Shane and I, we talked about that last week, even with Savachi, is, those 2 events carry so much weight.
We talked about the fact that it carries too much weight.
Yeah.
It's a lot of pressure on the 2 weeks of your year.
Right.
Because you could go somewhere else and just totally crush it.
Right.
But then if you have a bad weekend or a bad week at Minneo's, it's like...
It like crushes you, That's another thing.
Yeah.
I mean, and I look back on it now and I look at my results and I'm like, they're not as bad as I beat myself up to be. Like, whenever I raced them and I would get, 7th, 8th, or even my first year at Loretta's, I had been riding a dirt bike for 3 years and I got 16th, I think, and 18th in the 265 classes. And at the time, like, I was like, that is horrible. Like, that is the worst thing ever. But then looking back, because I thought I was going to get top 10 when I went there. And, you always probably, especially just getting started, like, you probably, I might have set my boundaries too high. I don't know. But anyway, I just looking back, I'm like, I didn't do as bad as I thought, you know?
No, I mean, honestly, think about it. You're racing against everybody in the United States.
Yeah.
Oh, not
So-
even United
so,
States.
like, the
I mean,
kid
there's
that
people
won-
that flew
People
in
all over the
flying.
world, kind of, and
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
get 16th as a kid, like
Yeah.
it's pretty good.
Yeah, I look back too. Like I think that year, I don't know if it was that year or 2014, because 2012 was my first year there, but 2014 was my second. One of the two. It was the year that Pierce Brown won like every race, like every moto or something, and by like 40 seconds, right? And I mean, I think he lapped me. So like I look back on that and I'm like that's cool, you know. Like I'm friends with Pierce now. He beat me by probably 3.5 minutes the first time I raced him, and like, you know, he's like, you know, an acquaintance now, so it's cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, you know, I mean, looking back, I definitely enjoy like looking back, because at the time I didn't really realize how cool it was and like what I was doing, you know. It was cool.
Right.
Like, so.
Well, outside of the Loretta's and Loretta's finishes, though, I mean, coming up through, is there anything that stands out in the amateur world for Cole Bradford?
I mean, we sprinkled in a little bit here and there. Like I said, I just did Minios and Loretta's mainly, but we would sprinkle in, like, Daytona was a big one. I think that was probably Daytona was my first good finish at a big race. I think I got like fourth in one of my 85 main events there one time, like, you know, years back. You know, I had a few other like solid, like 125s were kind of an unfortunate year for me. Like I tore my ACL that year. I've done both my knees, but I did my first ACL at the beginning of the year. Actually at the Tampa Futures, when they had the amateur day.
The day after, yeah.
I actually have a funny compilation of me crashing like 7 times that day. But one of them, I got my ACL, and you know that year, the Minios before that year, I podiumed Schoolboy 1 at Minios, and I had just been on a 125 for only a few months. I think it was Ty Masterpool, Jarrett Fry, and then me, and that was good, you know. So then I felt really good riding a 125 and ended up being out the whole year with an ACL. But I mean, you know, I have. It's weird. Like I was kind of all over the place, but I've always been a top 10 guy, you know. So no championships, unfortunately. I'm pretty sour about that. But like, you know, it's definitely something. Like even this year at Minios, I was looking back and I'm like, I totally could have been a guy to be up front and, you know, at least College Boy and, you know, stuff like that. I mean, I was a top 10 guy in pro sport this year at Minios, but it's just, you know, got to figure out upstairs, I think, sometimes, you know.
Yeah.
So, but like that winning, like I said, going into Minios, I'm like, this is my last chance as an amateur. Like I need to like send it and try to get a championship, you know, but it didn't work out. But well, you know, I think like going pro is going to be a good thing for me, because I can kind of, you know, I know like what my goals are and I can chase something, you know.
Well, we're going to get into that.
I'm not going too far.
One of the questions I want to talk to you about.
Hey, and you're still young, so
Right.
Even though you didn't have a championship in the amateurs,
Yeah.
don't stress on it.
Yeah.
Well, while we've got Mr. Matt Bell in here, I want to learn a little bit about Mr. Matt Bell, because we talk about you on almost every episode. But one of the things I want to figure out is, how did you get into moto? When did you start riding?
So I started riding when I was, I was born in Pennsylvania as well, Lancaster County. So we're home state.
Oh yeah. And listen, and home county.
And home county. So we moved down to Florida with my parents when I was about 5, and, you know, rode trail bikes and stuff, but never really got a chance to race. And then we went to Tampa Supercross, watched Ricky Johnson and Jeff Ward battle it out. I'm like, man, I really want to get on a dirt bike. So I think around 11, I bought an 85. I was CR80. Actually, in 1986, CR80 was my first bike, and started riding that, racing at Dade City. I mean, that was like the place to be. So went to a couple banquets. Kenny Yoho, we used to, well, he was faster than me, but I say battle. I mean, I was next to him on the start anyway, till the first corner.
That was the battle.
That was the battle. Yeah, then he was gone.
It starts off up here.
It does.
Yeah, race to the first corner. Yeah,
Yeah,
That
it's
was
crazy.
my first coach. That's who taught me how to ride a dirt bike.
Was he really?
Kenny, yeah.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
Yeah, so there's a story there about how we met years later. But so I rode for 5 or 6 years, and then got to high school and just couldn't afford to ride anymore. My parents didn't have a lot of money. Like, I had one bike. I rode 80s and then 125s, and then that was kind of it. Went to college, had a family, had a career, and I didn't get on a dirt bike for 26 years. Like, didn't get on a bike. And it wasn't that I didn't want to ride, it's just life happens. And
Sure.
So, gosh, about 5 years ago, I bought a dual sport bike and just a little, I think it was a Yamaha TW 300 or something, and I started jumping this dirt mound in my yard. I was like, man, I want to go out and ride like motocross again. So I talked my wife into letting me get a 2000 YZ 125. Is a beat up piece of crap, and I fixed it up. Remembered how to do top ends. So that's one thing my dad always taught me, how to work on the bike. Did a top end, got the bike running, and went out to Dade City and actually hole shot my first moto that ever, like on the gate, just because I was scared, I think, and then I came in sixth or something. But
at that point, what class was it?
That would have been plus 40.
Plus 40.
Yeah, Dade City.
So you weren't kidding about 26 years.
No, it was.
Yeah.
So
got the whole shot.
But got the whole shot.
But in that 26 years though, I mean, were you still a fan of the sport, follow the sport, or not much?
Not at all. Like I that's the thing that's crazy is like when they talk about some of these guys, Wyndham and some of those other guys, like I didn't know who they were because I completely got out of it. It was just, I was involved in soccer and I played during college and a few other things and stuck with that and just didn't really follow, professional motocross. So getting back into it, it was like starting over. I mean, I kind of still knew how to ride a bike a little bit, but, and then, we did that for about a year and, some of you guys know we do some ministry at the track and felt like, we wanted to start giving back to the motocross community. I'm like, hey, we're out at the track all the time, starting to do racing. And my wife and I kind of came up with this idea sort of jointly, really, at the same time. It was amazing. I talked to her and I'm like, hey, I think we ought to start doing some ministry to help these families. And she was like, yeah, I feel like we're supposed to do that as well. So I happened to run into Kenny, had not seen him like in 26 years at all. And he was running the I-4 series and went out to a local race at Bartow and shook his hand. I'm like, hey, I probably don't remember me. I don't think he did because he didn't see me after the first turn, but at the local races. But I said, hey, we'd love to help out with church services, anything you need us to do. And he's like, well, we have a guy kind of helping out, but he's sort of not able to make all the races. So if you want to talk with him and see if you want to fill in, talk with this guy, Dan, who had been helping out. And Dan's like, yeah, next race, you guys are up. You're doing the church service. So I was at 74. We did the church service there. And then honestly, after that, Dan just had other things going on. He's like, hey, I want you guys to take over. So it's been pretty consistent since then.
On the I4MX series?
Yeah.
And you're still doing it to this day?
Yep.
Oh, nice.
So
Yeah.
when was that? That was 4 years ago? You said?
4 years ago, yeah. So we've been doing kind of church out there at I-4 for Kenny pretty much consistently for the last 4 years. So, it's more than just church services. We do stuff for kids on Saturday evenings, get inflatables. We had 2 camps, one at Spider that had, I think, 45 riders, and then we did one at Moto Bros that had,
I think it's 70.
75 riders, which was pretty crazy. It was like far exceeded our expectations. So Scott was a trainer at Spider, right?
Yeah, and
Moto Bros. And then we had Colin Park out there, Dustin Jensen, who else? Ben Riddle was out there.
Oh.
Yeah, Kenny. So it was a great camp, and so it's a lot of what we do is motocross is a tough sport mentally. It's tough on families, and so we're kind of here to help people, I guess, navigate that. People see what we do at the track, but they don't see like the phone calls at 11 o'clock at night where a husband and wife are like getting ready to get divorced because they don't know how to navigate the sport, and we kind of talk them through that. So that's what we try to be there for these folks.
Probably not a good idea to come into our house then.
Hey, you can help RJ.
Hey,
Hey, let's go buy a semi.
yeah, there you go.
That went over really
So
well.
RJ mentioned in the beginning of the show that there's a connection between 3 of you, and I'm
Yeah.
sorry, I don't know the connection, so I'd want to ask you, Matt, like, how is there a connection between you 3 here?
Yeah, so I met Scott first. Actually, how we met, you were selling a bike.
Yeah, I was selling my my outdoor practice bike in 2020, and I didn't have literally any bites on this bike. And he messaged me like one time, and he was like, "Hey, like, is this thing still for sale? Like, how much do you want for it?" And I told him, and I feel like I kind of like waited a little bit, and then I still hadn't gotten anything. He messaged me a little bit. He's like, hey, is it still available? And I was like, yeah. And he's like, well, cool. He's like, can you deliver it to me? And yeah, I ended up driving to your house and sold the bike and just got to talking about racing.
Pennies on the dollar.
No, listen, he was.
I bought the Olin suspension too. So
Yeah, and he bought a set of Olin suspension
just
that I
kidding.
had. No, he's
more
a
than
good man, good man. So so he ended up buying that, and we just got to talking about just because that was my first ever time. I did a little bit of nationals in 19, and then in 2020 I tried to do as many of the nationals as I could, and just kind of talked to him about that. And I just came back from getting the what was that, the RC Hard Charger Award at the last round, and just got to talking, and he was like, hey, like, why don't we see about working together? And that was the start of it.
well, you convinced me. I mean, I think we talked for like 2 hours in my driveway. So the thing about Scott, when you get to know him, is he's obviously very professional. He's going to school. You're getting a degree.
I just
right?
actually finished my master's degree.
Oh,
Master's degree.
Yeah.
In what?
I just did an MBA with a concentration in sports business, actually right here at St. Leo.
Nice.
Yep.
That's where I got my degree from, was St. Leo.
Nice.
Congrats, that's sick.
Thank you. Thank
So
you.
we had a lot in common, I think, with the finance side of things, and really appreciated what he was doing. And I guess it was a couple of years ago, 2 years ago, 3. So I didn't have a ton of money to help out with the program, but we gave a little bit to get a sticker on the bike, and then that's kind of how things started rolling. So
Yep.
this year we're Scott's title sponsor, HPI, for 450 Supercross. So that's going to be exciting.
Nice.
Yeah, absolutely.
Nice. Well, we're going to get into the
you're racing
Supercross
this year
side.
for 450s?
Yeah.
Don't go in there yet. We'll get there.
I didn't bring it up.
Well, that's why I'm saying. I'm trying to tie all this in together, just like you're talking about. So I want Matt to continue here with how did you get
And Cole,
in
yes,
with
sir.
Cole?
So Cole, I never even met you, actually.
That's
So
crazy. I didn't know that till many of
yeah, so I was actually out riding at Dade City before Loretta's, and I saw you sitting on the wall, and I saw saw Bradford on the back of your jersey.
You
And
talking about this past Loretta's, like 2022?
yeah,
Yep.
Okay.
and I think Chris Stiers or somebody told me about you and said, hey, he's a good guy. You might want to talk to him about sponsoring him. And I was going to go talk to you, and I was like, I got to leave. I didn't have time to mess around. And then, I don't know, you posted something, I think, on Facebook about the van breaking down.
Oh, that happened a few times. So
Yeah, so you were trying to get to Loretta's. His van was broken down, and
No, I don't think it was Loretta's. I think it was a regional.
No, it was Loretta's because
Was it?
yeah.
well, I mean, I think it happened. Sorry, heading to the regional as well, but Loretta's, I couldn't get there. Like, I didn't have anything to get there.
Okay.
So I think you might be right. It might have been just.
It was right before Loretta's because so then I called you as I was driving to the convenience store to get coffee, like I always do. But we wanted to help Cole get up to Loretta's, so we helped give you some money to rent a van and get up there, and then that was kind of it for a couple weeks. And then one thing that means a lot, I think, to sponsors is I was riding out at Skytop, and Cole called me and was like, hey, I want to meet you. I'd never met you before. He came out to Skytop. We talked for a while, and then I don't know when did I start?
I definitely getting to Loretta's, I think, was the first big help, and then I went and met him at Skytop. We got to talking, and then we kind of just, I don't know, we just got along, and I think we kind of put something together for Sandbox, right?
Yeah. Yep.
So he helped me get to train out at Moto Sandbox for a little while, for 3 months actually, or longer maybe.
Yeah, I think it was through December we talked about originally.
Yeah.
So that was like huge because I was able to put my head down with Tyler Bowers at Sandbox and put a lot of work in, and then like he was saying earlier, I don't know if you want to tell him about what you told me at Minios, but I didn't even know this. But he basically, sent me to Loretta's, sent me to Sandbox, and he ended up helping me with a bike. He bought me a bike for me to train on leading up to and also to race at Minios. And then we got to Minios, and I did my first practice, and he goes, That was good. You looked really good out there. I've never seen you ride a dirt bike before. And I'm like, wait, what? Like, I did not. He's like,
Sight unseen.
You know, and I was
right.
riding pretty well in practice. So I was like, okay, that's good first impression. But, you know, it was just crazy. I'm really happy that and excited that he was able to like kind of take my word for, you know, who I am and everything, and just kind of put a lot into me when he really didn't know much about me. So it's been really good.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
You know, like that he never even watched you ride, didn't know anything about you, and
Yeah,
you're getting help from the guy.
It doesn't happen, right? Like you don't.
No,
you don't,
like that's
people
a
don't get-
good story.
Yeah,
for
people
sure.
don't get those kind of things. Like I definitely think about it a lot, and I don't. And especially after what he told me at Minios, like I said, that's hit me, and I'm like, you know, I feel like, you know, super like extremely lucky to have something like that happen to me, you know. And I've had a lot happen this year. Like I went through a lot this year to like even just be at the races, and I don't know, you know, how much of that like to go into, but like yeah, you know, it feels like things happen for a reason, for sure.
Yeah.
You know, I've done a crazy amount of work, just like I said, to be at the races and to be able to, you know, do it. But it would have stopped short of probably Loretta's and Minios if it wasn't for Matt. So
Yeah.
I just getting me to where I like, people always say like, oh, you know, I wouldn't be here without, you know, this sponsor or whatever, you know,
Right.
maybe they would, maybe they wouldn't, but I absolutely wouldn't have been the latter half of this year, been on a dirt bike, you know, so it's awesome.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
Well, and I mean that's one of those things. I mean, it's just like the podium interviews and everything, where it sounds so repetitive and the same thing overall. You know, I want to thank my family. I want to thank everybody. You know, get me here safe. Blah blah blah, and it can be repetitive to some people that, you know, may or may not have affected or impacted their life. But in your scenario, you know, it definitely does. And then, you know, we go through the week of Minios too, you know, and, you know, you and I got to meet at Minios and got to talking to, which, you know, I've known the name forever. I don't think I ever knew you personally, you know, well enough to just be like, hey, Cole, you know, jump in the cart with me. Let's go, you know, talk for a little while.
Yeah.
But in the same sense, you know, Matt and I were talking throughout the week of Minios. You know, Matt came and had a tour of the semi, and we kind of, you know, showed him what we were doing and what we wanted to do. And, you know, Matt was obviously interested. You even mentioned, Matt, too, at one point you were considering buying your own semi.
Yeah, well, somebody tagged me in the post for the semi you guys bought.
Right.
Like Ben Riddle did. I'm like, I don't know how to drive a semi. Like, I don't need a semi right now to
Yeah.
haul you guys around to local races. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
it's funny how things work out.
It
for a reason.
does. And I
but
mean,
you and Matt have already been talking.
yeah,
before that point.
I had
Yeah.
known Matt before, and I mean, I've said it on multiple podcasts. Like, I'll get a random idea, and I'll just call Matt and be like, hey, I just want to talk about this for a second, and I'll just call in the middle of the week. Or, you know, there's people that Matt helps right now already that I've known for a while, and, you know, I bounce an idea off of them, or then I call Matt and bounce an idea, and it just, you know, ended up that week of Minios that, you know, we were talking about this whole thing, and I didn't feel at the time that Cole or Aiden, neither one, would gain anything by staying amateur any longer. And I want, Scott, I'm going to ask you about this in just a second, but, you know, I felt like at that time, you know, what we have to offer, and I've talked to a lot of people about it. I mean, Timmy and I, you know, we talked about it on this podcast with, you know, when Timmy was on here, and what we have offered at Future Motocross for some of the people that have been with us and that we help is better than a lot of other teams out there. And I didn't realize that. You know, I thought, you know, here we are, the bottom of the barrel here, you know.
No, I could have
off.
told you that because I've been around a lot of teams where I'm just like, wow.
Yeah.
On the pro side, and I'm just like, wow.
Well, you know, Timmy and I talked about it at length one day, you know, about what different riders get on different teams, you know, whether it's, you know, another brand or it doesn't matter. But, you know, some of these guys, you know, with what they're getting, I was like, man, we're doing more than that already.
Yeah.
Well, I'm talking about teams where you actually have to pay to play.
Well, you
Right.
can pay to play.
You know what I mean? Like literally,
That's
back in
common now.
Back in the day, it was a Wonder Warthog. You know, like
Yeah.
people paid to put their bike under there or whatever, and
Yeah, but there's
Oh, you see it all-
there's
you see it all
still
the time.
there's teams right now that, I mean, I don't want to name anybody specifically because I'm not putting anybody down. I mean, it's whatever the budget allows and whatever the brand can afford, and I get that. But, you know, when I was thinking, you know, we're barely getting by and doing what we can for these guys, you know, then I would go to a race. Loretta's was an eye opener for me when I was talking to a specific rider there that was on a brand, and his deal was 3 bikes and a $5,000 parts allowance for the year.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's it?
Well, you're not
That's
loading,
really not that much when you're talking about a pro sport level rider.
It's not a lot of money.
You're not loading your tent with 30 riders either. You're
Right.
keeping it minimal. You're keeping it within your budget. It's just, in my opinion, smarter way of doing it.
Well, yeah, I think that's why so many teams fail. And we talk about that all the time, is that people make too many commitments. Matt and I have talked about this on the phone at length. I mean, if you go commit to world to everybody,
All right.
and the money stops coming in the door, and you have a contract that says you have to do X, Y, and Z for this person, and you don't have the funds to do it,
You're going to
go
be
bankrupt.
you're going to be the bad guy at every end of that situation.
Yeah, and that's why I've talked at length about trying not to overcommit ourselves to things. I mean, we want to be able to do something that's sustainable. We want to be around long term. At least that's my goal, is to be around long term and build something up here that has a great foundation to it. And if you go over promise and jump all in day one, it's just not realistic. And I think that's why so many teams fail. Is they go get a suspension tech and a motor builder and all these 20 people traveling with them to the races every weekend. And it's like,
No, you just hire one poo,
yeah,
and he does it all.
yeah. We have a Pooh and a Dookie that do a lot, and then you got.
Dookie, he can drive the truck, and
Well, and you've got me that's the truck driver. You got me that's the social media manager. You got me that's the logistics coordinator that handles flights and travel and everything. And I mean, honestly, that's bare bones. I mean, I said it on the last episode. I believe for probably having the lowest budget out of every semi that was at Minios, we probably had the strongest success.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
I mean,
that was impressive.
And that's been kind of the reoccurring theme after Minios is, what we were able to accomplish there with 4 different titles, between the guys that we had under the tent with, really a skeleton crew. I mean, there was only 2 people that were there that were getting paid.
So how many jobs does Dookie have now that he's been here a couple weeks? Does he have
Yeah,
at least
Dookie-
10 titles, or?
Let me tell you something. I have thoroughly enjoyed, and I would say it on air, I would say it off air, I would say it in front of his face, and I would say it behind his back, but I have thoroughly enjoyed having Dave Dookie here.
Yeah, it's good.
He has been awesome to me, and even Pooh. Pooh's the same thing. I texted Pooh the other day just about, how hard I'm running right now and kind of burning the candles on both ends, and I just made a simple comment, and Pooh was like, dude, I got you.
That's why I called you today, because me and this guy don't even hardly talk anymore because he's so busy with this stuff, And I'm busy with work, but it's affecting our relationship. I'm getting a little emotional.
We
about
need
it.
just a counseling session. We're done if you want. I mean,
Please, because like we were like this for a while, and then all of a sudden,
it takes over your life. It really does. Yeah.
It does, and it's the reason why I got out of it. To be honest with you, is because like it was my life for a long time, and I had a family and an outside.
Yeah.
So like I told these guys before, I was in the middle of nowhere, maybe Idaho, Colorado, or whatever, and I was by myself in the semi, and I woke up and I was like, I'm done. Like I need to go home.
Yeah.
After all those years, and it takes over your life. You're not lying about that.
It kind of goes back like when you asked, Matt, like, he was out of it for 26 years, but did you still follow it? I don't know how many people get out of it but still follow it. There's just pretty rare. I feel like you're either all in or you're not.
Well, that's why that's why I'm here doing a podcast. I'm still in it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't feel like it ever leaves.
No,
I feel
it's
like
an
this
itch.
sport is one of those sports that once you're in, you're in. And even, when you were talking about the Sponsor Cup days, I had the iMoto business at that time, and we were shooting a lot of production stuff. Myself, Tyler Kasha, shooting a lot of photo, video. We had the Red Bull contract.
Harrison, Darby Harrison's dad, was he?
Ian.
I can't think. Is it Ian Harrison?
Well, no, it's not Ian.
That
Jim.
name is
It was
what
Jim
I
Harrison.
connect to iMoto is Jim Harrison.
Well, they bought it from me.
Okay.
Jim bought it from me when I sold it and got out of it. But even when I got out of it, you don't get out of the sport. I'm still watching the Supercross as a fan on TV every Saturday night. I'm still following, the Racer X articles online or the Pulp show or whatever it may be. I'm still staying connected to all of it because I love it. I love the sport.
Hey, and then we go out and attempt a race as well, which is
Yeah.
You still
always
have
amazing.
The itch.
That's when it gets hairy.
Still have the itch.
Yeah.
Can't get rid of it.
No, I can't. But anyway, enough of that. Let's back over here. I want to jump back over to you, Scott. At what point in your career, specifically in the amateur world, did you say, okay, I'm making the transition? I mean, was it a certain race? Was it a certain class? Or was there something in life that happened that created that?
Actually, man, that's a really great question. I actually transitioned into pro. See, when I was, working with Timmy a little bit, part of his thing was, there's more to be offered in the pro side of things. And I really believe that wholeheartedly, especially as someone that never won any championships in amateur. I mean, I have won a moto at Loretta's. I've gotten top 3 overall at Loretta's, and I've podiumed at, amateur nationals. And excuse how I'm going to say it, you don't get crap from it.
Right.
You beat the guys, and you're running right there with the guys.
Yep.
But nothing comes.
I had that conversation today. I had a friend of mine come by here, Mark Scalzi.
Yep.
I've known him for a couple of years now. We do FTR stuff together, and he was talking. And he was asking me some questions, and one of his comments was about Aiden and switching to Cowie, and he was like, well, how much support were you getting or whatever? And I was like, you got to understand. I mean, the previous brand we were on, we bought our bikes at full retail.
Yeah, it's like the pickings are slim.
Yeah.
And everybody's fighting for those little slivers, especially in the amateur. I feel like for me, so I transitioned into pro. I did Loretta's, and I actually did better the year before. And when I podiumed at Loretta's and won a moto at Loretta's, and raced a 250 in College Boy against 450s, and I did really great in that class. And then in 250A, I literally ended up frying a clutch, and then I forget what happened. I think I got a flat in my second moto. So that was that. 250A was done. And then the following year,
That's the only race that matters too. That's the thing.
Yeah.
You comes down to this one week, and it's
it's
700 degrees outside.
Yeah.
I had one year where my fuel boiled every moto.
Yeah.
And I was riding so good. And
Yeah.
my fuel boiled, and I'm blah, 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 blah,
Yeah.
and it's like, that's the only race they care about.
Yeah, no, exactly. And that's the thing is like, it's so just cutthroat. It's so cutthroat. And, then the following year, which was supposed to be my last year at Loretta's, and it was, I literally went out first moto.
What year was this?
2018.
Okay.
And I was running like 4th or 5th, right there with the guys. Not even a couple laps into the race, bike cuts off. And it turns out that the wiring harnesses that year on Huskies sometimes came from the factory bad. Like it was just a problem that they had.
Yeah.
And so Jamie Ellis from Twisted Development, who had built my motor, actually, I was getting carted, or not carted, I guess towed off, by a quad, because the bike literally wouldn't start. That man, from, I kid you not, probably 11 in the morning until probably close to 8, 9 o'clock at night, was tearing that bike down personally, trying to figure out what the heck was going on, because it was his motor, his creation, and him and I worked together, and I worked for Thumper Talk a little bit doing some review work, and I had reviewed the motor. And, so he took it upon himself to see what was going on, and ended up going over to KTM and saying, hey, this just cost this kid a top 5. And I mean, DNF, just like that.
Yeah.
And so there was 250A, and in pro sport, I, like a total ding dong, on the last lap for no reason, tried to do that launch into the sand corner.
Yeah.
And literally, it wouldn't have benefited me jumping it, but I did it anyway. And I kind of came up slightly short on where that little kind of...
Blew the rear wheel out?
No. Better than that. I landed, my hand slipped off the handlebars, and I did a 360 and landed on my head. And
Stunts. Yeah.
Yeah. Freestyle is not for me. And I landed on my head, and that was that. Yep. But after that, I ended up just doing a bit of I did a bit of pro-ams. I did a race, the Evergood race, I think it was the Evergood Classic, or the Evergood Open out in Iowa, because I knew the guys that ran that. They used to be a part of Verb Moto, and stay close with those guys. And, went there and did, swept everything, beat pro guys that were there, made a bunch of money, and then went to Fastest in Florida and beat Alessi and beat all the guys that showed up there, and I actually got a call a little bit after that race from a guy that had a Supercross team and was like, "Hey, I want to bring you on for East Coast Supercross," and I was supposed to race a Honda, and that was for me. That was that. I was like, "All right, well, I truthfully, if I didn't have a deal, I don't really know if I would have gone into pro just because I didn't really have that kind of like support and just did not quite have that kind of, I guess, financial resources to go into that. But given that opportunity, that was for me. That was the thing was I had gotten a deal. It kind of turned out to be a little less than what was promised, and some people not really working the way that they're supposed to, which sometimes happens within the industry. There's some bad apples, but you live and you learn, and you come out of it better. But it sucked because I never got to race Supercross for my first Supercross in 19 because I dislocated my shoulder literally the week of my first round. I got a month of training in, and then I dislocated my shoulder.
Yeah.
But I ended up going out in 19, and I did a couple nationals. I think I did
Spring Creek and Budds Creek.
I did Spring Creek, Budds Creek. I don't remember if I did any other ones other than that. I think I did Red Bud and I did Ironman as well, and Dilla. And man, let me tell you, man, Red Bud for the first time. Oh my gosh, that was just unbelievable. But it was terrifying at the same time.
Yeah.
Because the crowd there, in Supercross, it's a lot different because you're in the stadium. But I will tell you, Red Bud is the one national that you can feel the crowd. Any other national, completely disconnected.
Yeah.
But at Red Bud, dude, those guys are intense.
Yeah.
Those fans are intense there. They mean it.
Don't get Dookie on Red Bud, man, because next thing you know, you'll have in your headset right in the middle of a race, Red Bud.
Listen, I live that, man. I go to the race. I'm like, I will wear an American flag, everything. I will be wearing sweatbands. I'll have the American flag sunglasses, and I'll be screaming Red Bud all the way in. I fully am into it.
Commit.
Red Bud hasn't exactly treated me the best in return.
Yeah.
But that's okay because I still love it.
Yeah.
That is my favorite track.
It's something that everybody who's into the sport should experience. Honestly.
Oh yeah. If you haven't been to Red Bud, you have to go.
Yeah. It should be if you are involved in motocross in any way, that should be on your bucket list. And if it's not, I don't know what's going on in your head.
Yeah.
Hey, did you know I raced Red Bud?
Raced it?
Yeah.
No.
Mini bikes.
Pit bike class?
110s, yeah. 1 year. Full factory support, Suzuki.
He was going around the track on the pit bike. Red Bud.
Yeah, it was legit. It was legit. What was it? Friday night they had the 110.
Oh
races.
yeah.
One
Yeah.
on the night track, across
Just a little track over
Yeah.
I don't know what it would be north of Lot B or whatever
Yeah.
that smaller track. Oh yeah, I raced a Red Bud.
Dookie has been consecutively to Red Bud for 46 years straight.
Really?
Wow.
Never hasn't missed a race in
Wow.
46 years.
Wow.
I heard they're gonna put a statue of that guy at the entrance of the place.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
His mouth's just like
So you did, Scott, you're going into the pro stuff here. You did you missed the 19 Supercross because of injury.
Yep.
You did the two outdoors the ones that we talked about, Spring Creek 34th, Budds Creek 35th. Mm-hmm. Then that was on a Honda 250.
Yeah, it was really interesting. My first national I ever made was Millville, and we literally got 6 inches of rain in the morning. And I was so thankfully the first practice out. And I did nothing but literally hold the throttle wide open because they didn't do any I think that they ended up cutting the amount of time that we were out there.
Yeah, cut the
and
line.
we were the first guys out there. And I literally remember thinking to myself, if I don't hold the throttle wide open, I am not going to make it. And I know that I have pictures from it and I looked like an absolute squid. My legs are all over the place. Man, I looked so horrendous on the bike. But in qualifying, I was like, I'm first practice. This is the best this track is ever going to be. Hold it wide open. Don't let off. And whatever happens, happens. And that was the first national I ever made. I had a decent start, and I remember I was I was like towards kind of like mid to outside on the start, but I had such a great jump, and for whatever reason, I was like heading straight in, like I was about to like be in the top couple guys in the start, and Christian Craig pushed me wide. Like he like went straight instead of turning right. I don't know if that was intentional, but I don't.
Everything's intentional.
Listen, I'm assuming everything's intentional, but no, but it's I think that I ended up crashing, and Marchbanks actually like ran into the back of my shoulder right where I had surgery, and my whole arm went numb for like 20, and I had to pull off because I literally couldn't feel my arm for where they had done the surgery, and I was concerned because I thought that I'd popped it back out again. And then I ended up going out and doing the second moto, and at Budds Creek I qualified in, and I think it was in the second moto I was running within the top 20, and I was behind A-Mart, and I seized a cam in the motor going up Big Gulp. So I was taking off, and I was going up the Big Double, and I literally got like just close to the top to where you can't back off. You can't, like, you're already committed. You cannot back off. There's no going back from there. And I literally was going up the face of this thing, and the bike was just, boom, and I like literally am up in the air, like full on Ronnie Mack, arms extended, literally holding the thing wide open to keep it from completely cutting off on me. Somehow managed to not die, somehow managed to not get landed on, and the bike was toasted.
Yeah.
Those were my first ever experiences. Other than that, I mean, the couple other nationals that I tried in, like at Redbud, I think I was in like a qualifying position, and someone like bonsai'd down a hill and like overshot a rut because the downhill was so nasty, and overshot their rut and like literally went right into me and took us both out. And then someone did the exact same thing at Ironman, and at Unadilla, I was in the LCQ running. I think I was running like third, and the guy that was in the lead literally swapped underneath the bridge before Gravity Cavity, and their bike flipped up and hit mine, and I flipped.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was it. Needless to say that my experiences in 19 for my first ever taste of nationals, it was a rude awakening.
Maybe not so hot.
No, it was not so hot. No, but it was a rude awakening. But man, like it was crazy and the thing is like I'm not a great qualifier. To this day, I'm not a good qualifier. Just haven't been. But once I get into the races, for whatever reason, all of a sudden, whole different ball game. And that's the way that it's been.
Well, how did the transition go from wrapping up that 19? You know, you missed Supercross, hurt. You go 20 or the outdoors in 19 on the 250F. What made you decide to go 450 for the 2020?
That's a really good question. Honestly, the biggest thing was cost, because in outdoors, unless you have a fully built bike, I mean, I don't mean to sound like extreme when I say this. If you don't have a built bike and you're racing 250 outdoors, you're wasting your time.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, at least if you have it to where it's competitive, but if you really want the best shot, it needs to be really spunky, to say the least. Yeah. Because the level of talent is so high, and because at the pro level, and especially in the 250 class, because the engines are so important.
And the bikes,
Yeah, the bikes are just...
I agree with that statement, because you can literally go out and get a 450.
Put suspension on it,
and do
change the gearing, and you're good.
Yeah,
that's
maybe
literally
even detune it a little.
Yeah, actually detune the dang thing. You know,
I will say that I don't do that.
Yeah.
I don't do that. But
he's a man, though. No detuning over here.
Well, I mean, like you said, though, I mean, you can take a stock 450, put suspension and ECU, a pipe, and gearing, and you're basically competitive.
Yeah, and that was the thing. Was for me, I was like, okay, well, I literally can't afford to do a 250. Can't do it. And I was looking at doing stuff for Supercross, for East Coast, and doing some rounds in East Coast on my own type of program. And COVID hit, and everything kind of went nuts. And then I didn't know what to do, so we were like, okay, well, we'll get a Husky 450, and we'll just go from there. And I had two that I was supposed to have. I had gotten one. And I was supposed to get support on a second one, and I ended up not like literally 2 weeks before the first national that I was supposed to do, I was told that they couldn't do anything. And I was actually riding out at the farm, Dade City, with Chris Johnson. And, just kind of, he was in it, he got to see me train a lot. And so, he was like, hey, like, did you pick up your second bike yet? And I was like, oh, like, I can't, like, the folks that were supposed to, help me with that, they, the bike, they were not going to help out with the bike. Through. And so he was like, hey, like, come to the farm. I have a brand new 2020 Rockstar Edition, no hours on it. And I think that he had just broken his back. And he was like, come and race it for the series. Have something competitive and go run it. So the biggest thing for me, honestly, in all truthfulness, the reason why switching to 450 was strictly just cost. I couldn't afford to do a 250 even if I wanted to.
It makes sense though.
Yeah, let's build a 250 Supercross lights team. Yeah, it makes great sense.
Thanks
for the info.
But I can
Thanks for telling us now.
I can imagine. Maybe that's why Geico's not around anymore.
Well, I mean,
they had a huge squad, and those bikes are blowing up. Always some issues. The cost on a 250 team is probably double.
In Supercross, it's not as bad. Like in Supercross, I mean, it's nice to have the pep, but honestly, nowadays, like the biggest thing is like if you can get a bike and do a little bit of work on the internals, and you get a good tune on the ECU, and you have good gearing on it, like you are competitive. Are competitive, and you can get for example, like my Supercross bike, like, in 2021 when I actually got to do my first ever Supercross, like it was a motor, a mod motor and an ECU and setup and all that, but it could do 30 hours on a piston, literally no problem.
Yeah.
Some of them you can't. Like I bought 2 Alessi bikes and they warned me like, don't let this go past 15 hours.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And then you start realizing, I should have asked more questions. It was a good deal on a bike.
You're like, what do you mean 15 hours?
Well, then he was like, well, the way you ride, you can probably go longer. I don't know what that meant, but
oh no,
but,
we know what that means.
Right. But then I started realizing, well, the pistons are $550 XPR billet pistons you have to put in it, and then we started taking the engine apart, and there's all kinds of hocus pocus going on in there.
Well, trying to get power out of a 250 though, just like Scott's saying. I mean, it's you got to push that bike
to be competitive.
To get there, to be competitive with other brands out there. I mean, we're not going to beat around the bush here. I mean, those Star bikes are fast.
Yeah,
even a stock Yamaha's fast.
Yeah, there's no getting around that.
So to try and be competitive with those guys, I mean, I was very impressed with our motor package that we had for Minios. I mean, Aiden was pulling whole shots in 250, against the Star bikes. Yeah. I mean, and that, like you're talking about, for us, there was a little bit of internal work, bone stock ECU, and an HGS pipe.
Yeah.
I mean, and the mapping that we have coming, we're doing testing this week with Git. They're coming up to the compound tomorrow.
I was going to say that's a big advantage that we have with our team is like being.
Yeah, we have an in-house motor builder,
Dan,
Yep, and then Dan with Git and Athena. I mean, having him in our corner and even an in-house motor builder now at the compound that builds a fast motor. I mean, the bike's fast, but same thing you said though. I mean, don't let that bike go more than 10, 15 hours.
Exactly.
And then you got to rebuild it, and that's a huge cost. But that's one of the main reasons why we put Aiden on a 450, leading all the way up to Minios.
Yeah.
The 450, we didn't do anything to it. I mean, he actually wanted us to tame it down.
Yeah, you don't have to do anything to him.
And he rode the 450 basically as the practice bike Monday through Friday, and then raced the 450, and it is bone stock. I mean, it rolled off the showroom floor, and we go practice. I mean, there is nothing to it that has been done. So it was, I can fully see why the 450 cost wise, financially when we can run 50 hours on a 450 and not do anything to it versus
you don't have to worry about it.
Keeping a motor and the 250s, keeping them in rotation every 10 to 15 hours. And then obviously there's a cost that goes with that too.
And time and effort. And
there's a lot of moving parts. I mean, that's why we basically keep a spare 250 all the time.
Yeah,
because if one goes down, that's a day lost of training and practice that we can't afford. So we keep one in the background all the time. But I do want to go into that. You talked about 2021 racing.
Yes.
You kind of said your first real Supercross.
Yes, absolutely.
So tell me about how that went.
Oh man, that was.
So you
such
did
an
that on a
experience.
250 though, right?
I did my
Husky 250.
Yep. Yeah, I did my first ever. I did my first ever races in Supercross on a 250. Truthfully, I did not get hardly any time like for prep because I know that there was like a ton of stuff going around because of COVID and like the supply shortage, and like I was getting bikes from JMC out in Washington. So then like shipping the bikes from Washington to here literally took ages.
Yeah.
So I think that I got like, again, literally a month before Supercross, and I was able to actually ride it. And, it was kind of like flip flop back and forth. Didn't know if you're going to do west, didn't know if you're going to do east, but east was west. And that whole time when everything was just like absolutely nuts.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, well, I'm going to enter in because it's the most cost effective. There's 3 rounds in Indianapolis. I can drive there in a day, versus going out west. Just to at least get my feet wet in this. And yeah, my first ever Supercross, my first 3 Supercrosses were at Indy, which I have heard was probably one of the most challenging things I could have done. And now that I've raced Indy a few times, I can say for a fact that it was, just because the dirt's so soft and it's so much not like it is here. And it was such an experience. And I will say, like, I did arena cross in order to get my Supercross points back when they were actually doing that, and you had to make the main events. And then I did a little bit of like the Supercross, the road to Supercross thing. I did 2 rounds of arena cross and 2 rounds of the Supercross Futures, or whatever they called it back then, road to Supercross. But going into that for the first time, I mean, arena cross was cool. But at the same time, everyone's like, oh, it's just arena cross. So it really wasn't that big of a deal.
Right.
But going into Supercross and like being the first heat and being on the gate for opening ceremonies was probably the most terrifying thing of my life. I remember literally, I mean, it was 9
See what
degrees
you have to look
outside.
forward to, bud.
Scared
Listen,
yet?
I ain't scared.
Listen, it was 9 degrees outside.
Not yet.
But I was sweating.
Yeah.
I was sweating
Yeah.
inside. Like literally I was sweating. And when it's not too bad, and then all of a sudden all the lights came on and like, yeah, you go through qualifying and all that stuff. But when it's actual night show time and everybody's in the stadium,
Yeah.
and it's like, holy crap.
Oh yeah.
And
There's at least 3 people watching you. Probably.
exactly. So
That's the mentality.
I remember going through that same comment though, even with Aiden. We went through the Supercross Futures stuff last year, and the Supercross Futures, that the area was at WW. We went through the area. We made it to the regional, which was in Atlanta.
yes.
Atlanta was fine and dandy, but Atlanta was a day race, and the future stuff
that
was
was-
before the night show at the regional.
Yes.
But then the finale was Salt Lake City. In Salt Lake City, they put the Supercross Futures mixed into the night show.
Yeah.
So he actually went to the line, stadium full of people, however many, 60,000 people in Rice-Eccles Stadium. And you're talking about, the lights are on, the stadium's filled. I mean, that's a whole different
I wonder if
ballgame.
they do it intentionally like that now, just to kind of get the younger guys like exposed.
Well, I think the finale, definitely the finale, but the areas and the regionals were a lot different. The area, there was basically nobody there, and the regional was at Atlanta, but it was during kind of like the day program. Yeah. It wasn't really part of the night show. So it was still, yes, you were on a full Supercross track. Yes, you were still at Atlanta Supercross, but you weren't in the nighttime premiere program like you were in Salt Lake City. So
Yeah, it was.
that was nerve-wracking
That's
for
the
him.
dream, right?
Hey,
though?
imagine if did you pull the whole shot?
Listen, I almost pulled the whole
because
shot. I was
imagine
in,
being
like, the
that
top
nervous
couple
and then
guys.
pulling the whole shot.
Oh my gosh.
No, so let me tell you.
That's
So
the dream, right? Like you growing up racing amateur.
Oh, it
I know
is.
it's frightening. It's probably.
But
I mean,
once
I know-
if you do pull the whole shot, you gotta.
But
but even
has
just
to
the
go out the
lights in the
window.
stadium.
let me tell you,
and everything,
probably
that's
one of the weirdest like first experiences ever. Okay, because night show. On the start, I mean, I think that I was in literally there was a picture. I was in like the top like 5 guys. But what was weird was they had that track design. Number one, it was like freaking Gravity Games out there with the big doubles, which was the weirdest thing I've ever seen. And then literally for the start, it was the one where we did that thing where we came around in between the doubles, and then we like jumped off the one berm and like went back.
I know what
You remember
you're
that?
talking about,
Yeah. And it was the weirdest thing because like nobody knew what to do because they never really, I don't think that they let us do that in qualifying because everybody is, right there. So like nobody really knew what to do. And first heat, I like cased the living crap out of the catapult and like went from like fifth, like I don't really even remember where I got in the heat race. And then LCQ time came, and I think that I got like second in the start or something like that. And I was riding in the final transfer for like literally the entire race. And I didn't know this, but during the LCQ, my shock had actually broken. I think it was like the top out spring broke. And so the bike was like just so bouncy in the rear, and I literally couldn't hardly do anything. And literally on the last lap, because I was like trying to push the guy in third, but I was like, I was a rookie and it was my first race, and I was so close to making a main event, and I was like, okay, like, do I really try to be super aggressive and just pass this guy because I keep running into the back of him, but it's kind of hard to get around him and the bike feels weird? Or, do I just kind of relax? And, being inexperienced, I was like, okay, I'm going to relax because the bike's not feeling good. And then the guy that was coming up behind me ended up passing me, and I lost out on my first ever main event. And then in the second Indy, some dude collided with me. He like literally I forget who it was, literally cut across a jump because it was like a wall jump, and then we did a 180, and then it was like you would either go double single or single double, and I went around the outside to go double single, and this guy literally, he came across the whole track, and I like jumped back across to the other side, right, to go back past him, and he clipped a tough block, and then like literally shot over to the left where I was and collided with me while I was in the air. And literally both of us didn't make the main event again.
That was the last lap, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was screaming at the TV.
I was.
And my wife, we were both screaming at the TV.
That was
screaming at the guy that took you out.
I was furious. I was
that was
absolutely
Indy 2.
That was Indy 2.
Yeah, because Indy 3, you make your first main.
Indy 3.
Yeah.
Indy 3 was my day. That was my day. That was probably like one of the most accomplished like feelings ever, was making my first ever main event, because like I actually was like making sure that I was aggressive. I think that I like literally slammed 2 people at the end of a rhythm section because I like tripled out and then like literally came up into them and like literally almost put them off the track. And yeah, I finally made my first ever main event in 2021 at Indy 3.
Yep.
And then I
get 18th.
Yeah.
18th on the night, and then you get another one that year too.
Yep, I went to Orlando 1.
Orlando 1.
Which that was, if I thought that Indy was sketchy, Orlando was way sketchier. Because it rained, because it rained that morning, and I think that it had been raining like all week, and so they had the track covered. So like everything was insanely hard underneath because it was so hot. It was just baking underneath the tarp, but the rain would roll off of it. But anywhere that the tarps were like overlapping or anything like that, it would collect. So you would have like insanely hard jumps, and the whoops were like literally straight up and down. But everything in between, like all your transitions, were so soft.
Yeah, so it developed pockets in between the transitions, and then you would hit a hard spot going. Yeah,
exactly. And that was terrifying. But I still made the main, which was really super cool.
Yep.
And then I tried to do a couple of 450 rounds just to kind of give it a shot. I think I did Daytona and I did 2 Atlanta rounds, and that was an experience that I was not prepared for. As a rookie in Supercross, and especially as like my first time ever going into 450 rounds at speedway events of all times, which was the absolute worst thing I could have done, because that was number 1, terrifying, and number 2, like unlike anything that I had ever done. Everybody's like, Supercross is a different animal, and that's 100% true. Speedway events are a completely different animal.
Yeah.
Like and honestly, like
And when you say
Daytona's
Speedway, you're talking about like Daytona International
Yep.
Speedway and
Yep.
Atlanta Motor Speedway, because
Exactly.
that's the year that they went to the
Atlanta,
Speedway
yep.
outside of the stadium.
and I was not happy about that. I was
Yeah.
not happy about that. But it was such a weird experience. Like, and I will say, like, in Atlanta, totally different beast compared to Daytona. It's literally so massive.
Yep.
At least Daytona, things are spaced pretty decently. I mean, the track deteriorates and it's kind of its own beast, but Atlanta, there's just so much room. And unless they're trying to do a 2-minute Supercross track like they did in 2021, everything is spaced so much to where you have so much speed everywhere, but then you have to like stop almost going into certain like obstacles, unless you're like, the top guys who just rocket into everything and then just, I don't know, make it look like it's nothing. But it's such a different experience. And Atlanta for me, like which was when I was trying to do the 450 rounds, I literally remember like being on, because it had rained before, and so we only got one they didn't do any free practice, they didn't do a first and second qualifying, they just did one qualifying, that was it.
Yeah.
And it literally, you could see the rain clouds coming, and like about 3/4 of the way through the practice before me, through the qualifying before me, it was like good, and then it just started downpouring. And so by the time I got out there, it was just a mud fest.
Yeah.
And that was like, honestly, it felt like a bit of a kick in the shin for like trying to do like my first ever like 450 Supercross races. But it didn't keep me from doing 450 class this year.
Yeah. I saw that. I was actually going to talk to you about that in 2022. So this past
Yep.
season, you decided to go 450 Supercross full time.
So I actually went in with the intention to do 250 East, and I had my 250 built, and I had the full intention on just doing 250 class, but I actually got really bad carbon monoxide poisoning at Minneapolis, and I know a bunch
there
of
with you.
Yep, and Matt
was bad.
Matt was there, and I have asthma, so that made that 10 times worse. I mean, I suffered for days after that. Like, I had no energy. Like, I was coughing really bad.
From
like,
what? The hauler or the hotel? Or where did
no,
you
from
get
the
that
stadium. The stadium,
They-
because
really?
It was -2 outside the stadium, so they were not bringing in any outside air. I mean, it was like a cloud inside there. You couldn't breathe. Like our
I
eyes
heard
were
about
burning.
that.
It was
from the bike.
from the bikes.
people were throwing up.
Yeah.
People were throwing
Is
up.
it like a dome?
Yeah, it's closed. It's a
It's
closed
closed
dome.
stadium,
Closed-in
and they
stadium.
weren't circulating any air. And I get it; it was literally so beyond freezing cold outside that my van literally could not produce
You think they could
hot air.
squeak a little bit in, like
No,
a
they
little bit of
wouldn't.
cold air?
No,
was
they
bad.
they wouldn't. I mean, I know
All
that.
exhaust fumes.
Yeah, and I even know that Starling was like, he said that he was like feeling like he was gonna throw up, and like he was having an out of body experience, and he said that like he wanted to like take a nap, like during the night program. And I'm like, and a bunch of people got sick. I mean, for me, like because I, have asthma and stuff like that, like my lungs already aren't working exactly as great as they should. But like, in the midst of it, it was the weirdest feeling. I literally did not feel like I was riding the bike, but my brain was not riding the bike. It was like literally the most like autopilot feeling. But it was scary because I did not feel like I was in control of what was happening. Like it was terrifying. And I got really, really sick. I literally remember for 3 days after that, I mean, my O2 numbers were horrendous. Like they were like 91, 92, like, I wasn't really I was having a little bit of a hard time with the breathing side of things, but literally my oxygen saturation was just terrible. And I I just could not do anything. I was literally just so tired. I was so exhausted all the time. But after that I was like, you know what? Like I need to make money. I'm a business guy, and I looked at the numbers, and I felt a little bit of energy from HBI, from Matt Bell coming in. You know, I did a little bit of my own accounting and just kind of looked at things, and I was like, dude, I literally cannot go. It would not matter if I made a main event every single time. $850 for a main event and $250 is not going to keep me going. It's not going to do it. But I go into $450 and I make a night show and I get $1,000 or $1,200, something, I forget what it was. And then, you know, you go into $450 and you make a main event, you get $2,000 plus. That will keep me going. And, you know, I'm used to being in the 450 class. Why not, you know, basically man up. And if you don't make the races, if you're not making the show and you're not getting up there and you're not fighting for that, you know, it's not to say like, oh, you're wasting your time, but like if you're not up in it, like, you know, you can't keep going. You know, if you don't have the ability to keep going and you don't have the, you know, the ability to be up there with those guys, like, don't know what to tell you. And that was the thing, was, you know, I went into that with the intention of, I need to make more money. You know, I'm sure that the conversation's been had a few times, you know, with the, you know, when it comes to like pay for privateers and all that kind of stuff. And it's hard, you know, unless you have built a program that can sustain itself regardless of how you do, you know, the relying on, you know, purse money is really hard. And that's what it came down to. But honestly, I will say that I went into 450 on the 250, and I stuck through it, you know, on the 250 in the 450 class. And I will say at Speedway events, that was probably a really, really terrible thing. But otherwise, I ended up making a few main events, and, you know, that was even more satisfying than ever making my first ever Supercross main, which my first 450 Supercross main was at Indy. Yep. And then I made another one at Foxborough. Yeah, that track was also very sketchy. But yeah, so, you know, that was, and for me, I feel like I really grew a lot being in the 450 class, you know, having to handle rough tracks all the time, you know, racing with those guys, you know, that are, you know, the guys that are, you know, just making it into, you know, the main events and stuff like that in 450 class, like, they're serious dudes, you know, like, on a lot of times it's, you know, guys that are just doing Supercross, you know, so it's guys that really take, you know, that side of things as, you know, that's like their literal job.
Well, you're racing against those guys that have came up through the 250 class.
Yeah,
they've been in the 450 class a lot. They're veterans.
Yeah,
know?
exactly.
So you're going out there to hang it out with the big boys, you know, when you get into that class.
Yeah, absolutely.
Can we rewind a little bit? So are you going to college this whole time too? Because you said you had a master's.
Yeah,
so are you going to school while you're racing?
Yeah, I've always been full time. I've never. Wow. I have literally only ever taken one semester off. Other than that, I have always been full time, and I actually I've pretty much been straight A. I mean, I was a 4.0 GPA for associates. I was 3.9, like 3.92 or 3.94 or something like that for my bachelor's degree. And then I actually even did like a little bit of like a side program, or like a side. It's kind of hard to explain. I did like a competition for. I was kind of representing myself, kind of representing the school for it's like a simulation, like a business simulation, where you control like products and the marketing and the pricing, and, you know, you literally control every aspect of a business, and you compete against other people. And there were people that, it's an international competition. And it's done on a website, and you basically just run this business, and you do it all through this simulation. You have to guess a bunch of things about the market and stuff like that. And I did it single-handedly and won it against guys that were professional business people, because companies use this program for training. There were people that were from overseas in like London and Germany that were graduate students, and I won against them. So I did that, and I realized, you know, for me, I'm like, you know, I feel like the bachelor's just wasn't really enough. I felt like it was necessary to kind of take it that next step. There's always a life after racing, you know, and honestly,
it's
like
one of the biggest comments and topics I have at dinner with people right now
Yes.
is, even Bo Parton that came on to our team as a sponsor with the Morgan Stanley Financial Group. Bo Parton's been around in Florida racing for a long time, but he handles portfolios for some of these guys because you get some of the families that put so much into racing.
Yes.
And they unfortunately, they take away from the education.
It gets overlooked.
And the education gets overlooked. And, the sad thing is, and I hate even bringing this up, but it's the truth.
Yeah.
You're one bad accident away from never riding a dirt bike.
No, absolutely. No,
And-
100%. That's how I felt with my
having
shoulder
to have
injury.
a fallback plan. You know, I mean, what's plan B if racing doesn't happen? Because racing could be done tomorrow.
Yeah, no, exactly. And that's the thing for me is and that's something that's always been instilled in me is, you need to be more than just a guy on a bike. You need to make sure that you have a secured future, not to use it as a thing of, oh, well, if this just doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. There's no sense of, there's no room for mediocrity. It's always be the best you can, be the absolute best person that you can, enhance yourself the best, set yourself apart, make sure that you're set up for life after racing. And it's true, whether it's, it just doesn't make sense to do it anymore, or you want to move on with another chapter in your life, or it's a thing where, it's very unfortunate where riders get hurt so badly and it's either you can't get on a bike, period, or it's like, it's just literally not even worth it.
Yeah.
And it doesn't necessarily have to result in a master's degree.
No.
I mean, a rider can go out and get a Class A license.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I've made hundreds of thousands of dollars with that license.
Yeah. I mean, and there's skill trades out
could be
there that you
anything.
can do. I mean, whether it's going to be a welder or whatever. I mean, there's
Absolutely.
technical schools that you can do. And I think that's a great thing. And a lot of the things I bring up to people all the time. I mean, I remember having a dinner with Cooper Webb, and we were talking about, what does retirement look like and what do you do? Because one thing about the sport is you retire so early.
Yeah.
And people don't really think about, well, hell, I'm going to be 35 years old and retired and have no more income coming in the door.
Yeah.
And you still have
Well,
a
you're not
whole life
going to
ahead.
last from 35 years old until
you have
80.
a whole life ahead of you.
Exactly.
After
Exactly.
that,
And that's the thing is, for me, I figured that, especially nowadays, just with kind of how it is in general, where, unless you're doing work that doesn't exactly follow degree, if you are going into any professional environment, a bachelor's is literally a minimum. It gets you in on the ground floor.
Sure.
I wanted to take it a step further and say, okay, well, I want to be the next step. I want a master's degree. I want to make it to where, when I'm finished racing on my terms, whatever that looks like, I want to be able to step away from it and be secure and be able to provide for my family. And I want to be able to provide for myself. I want to make sure that I can be stable on my own and be able to have a very solid life.
Well, and when you
solid
choose
plan.
that next career path, whenever that time may come,
Absolutely.
that's just another notch in the belt that kind of puts you above the next guy.
Exactly.
So
Exactly. And that's the thing is like I've been in the industry my whole life, and I have really amazing connections, both here in the United States and worldwide. And I've written for Verb Moto. I wrote for Verb Moto for 3 years. I wrote for Thumper Talk. I did review work for them. I've done review work for Weisco. I've done the vlogging. I still do the Privateer Path as we're coming up on season 3 of the Privateer Path on YouTube. So I do these things and people know my name. They know that I can speak well, that I'm articulate, that I know the backside of business with this degree. They know that I'm comparable to do those things, to be able to, get a leg up and to be able to, if I want to go into the industry, which, we'll see. That's the thing is we'll see what that looks like. But if I want to do that, it is another notch in the belt. It's another thing that says, hey, like, choose me, and be able to do something and honestly, and the other part of that is I want to be able to do something that's impactful, in the racing community. I mean, right now I do something small where I am an ETS fuels dealer, and, I do it for the sake of wanting to help people. I love the brand. I believe in the brand, and they're something that I fully trust. But, my thing with that is, obviously to be able to, give an outlet for those guys to people in the Florida area. But, I also, do my best to be able to give when I can. and to be able to have an impact. You know, it's important. You know, it's not making me, you know, a lot of money, and I don't really have it for the intention of making money. You know, I do it to support riders. You know, I literally support other pro riders with this stuff. I support amateur riders with this. You know, it's kind of something that's important to me, you know, for that side of things as well.
Sure. No, that's great, man. And honestly, that's a great story right there. I mean, I never knew that, you know. I mean, I don't think many people knew that, you know, that you were racing pro the whole time while getting not only your bachelor's degree but your master's also. So, Cole, you got your master's
Yeah,
going?
I'm working on it right now. I got 2 of them coming out.
Hey, Cole,
There we go.
Cole, no pressure, but as
Yeah, no pressure
as a
at
young
all.
guy, like, people should call this guy. He's a racer, you
Yeah.
know, and honestly, it's important because racing is obviously your focus
Yep.
right now. But
I think the dads that listen to this podcast need to look to Scott
Sure.
to see a direction for their kids, because
Yeah.
I can't, even with the amateur side of HPI racing, it's hard to convince dads sometimes that like your kid may not make it.
Well, and that's one thing, and Scott, you could probably allude to this too, but I think what Matt's referencing right here is like if you're not a top 10 main event guy every single weekend, the chances of making money at doing this with how expensive it is, you know, the cost of the sport, everybody knows the cost of the sport. We talk about it openly on this show. And when you're not a top 10 guy every weekend that's getting a salaried ride and you're putting money out of your pocket to go racing every weekend, I mean, there's only so many years you can do it. And, you know,
absolutely.
there's a point where passion and heart, you know, have to turn into living.
Yeah,
And,
exactly.
you know, if exactly the reality of it. And if you're back there getting, you know, 20th place at some, maybe not all main events, can you truly make money doing this?
Yeah, that's the thing is it's for me, you know, I know that I'm not a top guy. I am obviously doing my very best to continue to improve myself and to continue climbing the ranks, because that's something that I've always done, is just continue to climb the ranks, and I get better and better. But you have guys like Chiz who have had his own program. You know, he's had his own program for how long? You know, now he's with HEP, but you know, he's had his own program for how long, and he's been able to support himself and his family very well, and he does very well. I mean, of course, he places very well. You know, Starling, who, you know, has his own program as well, and that's something that I've done as well, is, you know, create my own program and make it to where it's self-sustaining. And it's very hard to get to that. You know, that's kind of that's the thing, is you're either a top guy or you're kind of creating your own program, because, you know, as you guys mentioned, there's a lot of teams out there. I mean, it's pay to play, you know, that's just how it works. And it's so hard to be able to pay that bill that those teams want. You know, and honestly, it's more worth it. And especially for me, it's more worth it to just do my own thing and work with the people that I know that I can trust and the people that are behind me.
Well, if you get the right people in your corner,
Absolutely.
you know, which is something that Chiz has done also. You know, he's
Absolutely.
put the right people in his corner, and even you know, Starling too.
Absolutely.
Justin's kind of done the same thing. That if you put the right people in your corner and you can make financial sense for you to be able to go racing, then I can understand that.
100%.
It's the guys that are struggling, you know, that can even hardly get to the races, you know, don't even have enough money in their bank account to get to the races, but yet they continue to try to go.
It's hard. It's hard.
I don't know at what point that comes where it's like, okay, we can't do this anymore, you know, but there is a spot where that does have to happen. But
I mean, I will tell you, you know, just from my own thing, and I could be slightly off. I mean, but I'm pretty good with my numbers and the side of things. And let me tell you, man, I am a bare bones guy. You know, you talk about, like, you know, running the team and just kind of having the essentials, having the things that you need. I feel that down to my core. Like, for me, running a 450 and keeping my costs literally as minimal as possible. I mean, for a year of racing Supercross and outdoors, you're looking at $80,000. And that's even being conservative. Like, that's running bare bones. That's nothing fancy.
like as frugal as you can get it.
Listen, man, I'm talking, you're
doing
driving down.
you're doing your own bike prep. You're driving yourself to the races.
Absolutely. I mean, I do. I mean, I'm I'm doing it myself. I mean, thankfully, I'm working with Team Next Level Racing to be able to transport my stuff for Supercross, and I have a great title sponsor, HPI Racing. You know, that helps me do what I do. You know, it is a lot. And you have to be able to understand how to create that. But if you're not finishing in those places, it's definitely hard. I mean, and of course, I'm still, you know, right now seeking, you know, some other sponsorships. I'm trying to bring on other big sponsors and trying to bring on, you know, people to help support what I do. And I mean, of course, I can give plenty of value back because I am in main events, you know, and I'm getting, you know, more and more into main events. And as I go into, you know, growing more with the 450 class and actually being on a 450 now, you know, that becomes a more realistic thing. You know, I also offer stuff with YouTube. I have stuff on Instagram, and I focus on viral content. You know, there's a lot, you know, and I have a lot of, you know, connections with brands that I work with and have a large network. You know, I can put a dollar figure on what my TV time's worth. I can put a dollar figure on what my reach is worth. And, you know, that's a hard thing to do, and to be able to grow that is also really hard.
Yeah.
You know, but, you know, like right now, I mean, I'm training, and, you know, I do my bike work. I mean, my girlfriend's amazing, and, you know, she's been really learning and has been, you know, taking the time to learn, you know, what it takes to, you know, work on the bike just to help me out, you know, and to be a part of what I do, you know, not anything for the, you know, other than literally just the sake of just helping, because, you know, it's you see how hard it is, because, you know, I'm putting the work on the bike. I'm, you know, having to mess with all the bike stuff. I'm having to change all the sprockets, having to change the stuff on the suspension. You know, when we, you know, go to do testing, you know, I'm tearing the suspension off. You know, I'm the guy that's, you know, doing all of that. I'm handling all the stuff with the sponsors. I'm the one that's doing all the communication, all the calls, all the emails, all that stuff. Yep. You know, and still having to live, you know, and still having to make all of that stuff happen. You know, and, you know, not only that, but then to be able to take time and be able to, you know, do stuff with Instagram and be able to create reels and posts and do stuff with.
Trust me, I see
YouTube.
it every day.
Yeah,
I deal with it every day. It's a lot. I mean, I fully understand why there's positions out there for social media management.
Yeah,
you know,
100%.
I mean, there is a true job for that out there.
Absolutely,
because it does take up so much of your time doing that. But Cole, it kind of sounds like you're a factory rider now. Then,
yeah, I wanted to get into.
Feel like one.
I wanted to get into Cole's new position, transition, all the above.
Ask him about it. So I mean, basically, you know, wrapping up Minios, you were on the gas.
Yep.
Right, and then we ended up talking. Matt and I got together, and we want to make this idea and this team where HPI Racing comes on board as basically the title sponsor of Future MX, and we say, hey, we're going to put 2 guys on the East Coast Supercross, which is you and Aiden. And I just felt like at that time there probably wouldn't be much more to benefit out of the A class. But
yeah,
tell Shaner about the transition. I mean, I
saw some videos this week and of y'all going through the whoops and
look pretty good.
You look pretty dang good.
I feel good. I mean, like, it's like he said, up until Wednesday of Minios, I had no idea what my plan after Minios was.
Yeah,
so
your whole program, like almost.
Well, the whole next year of my
100% of your program changed like in a week.
Yeah, the whole next year of my life was like went from having absolutely no idea what I was going to do to like, here's a plan, here's a goal, and like, this is what we're doing, you know? And it honestly couldn't have come in a better time, like I said. So, so I switched all my, you know, switched everything over.
Yeah, did you switch brands? What were you riding before?
Gas. And I've been on gas or, you know, KTM, whatever, Austrian bikes.
Yeah.
Well, actually, not KTM, but I was on Husky for a long time. But
so it's been years on a steel frame bike.
Only KTM or Husqvarna or whatever, KTM basically. Besides 1 year in 2020 on a Honda.
Okay.
Other than that, I've been on Austrian bike for probably, I think, since I was on. I was on a Suzuki 85 at first for maybe, I think, a year or less, whatever, when I first got on 85s. And then it was KTM all the way through. So,
wow, okay.
So, yeah, KTM 125s, everything.
So this started from Minios, this whole trend. transition into this between you and RJ, and like how did that work out?
Yeah, it's getting muddy because like so much has happened in 4 months.
So
I think.
fast.
with this
Like
whole thing.
honestly,
Well, I know I was talking with Cole, and you had one bike, right? 250 race bike, right? And
Yes,
It was blown up,
Yep.
so he had no bike. So we got it fixed, and then found him actually a gas 350. I got one of those too, and he's like, "Well, that'll be a good kind of mix. You're not having to bang it off the rev limiter the whole way around the track."
Yeah. No, and I really liked it. Like when I got on the 350, I was stoked. Like, it's funny because a few years back I had a 350.
Yeah.
And it didn't work for me because I don't know what it was. People would tell me like, oh, it's more like a 250. It's more like a 450. And when I got on it, it was like, it didn't work for me. I was just like, I want to be on a 450. I just want the power of a 450.
Yeah.
So I was actually like, I had a weird like couple years there where like I raced pretty much only a 450. Like I've ridden a 250 like maybe 5% as much as I've ridden a 450 in my career. And like I was saying on the Honda in 2020, I raced a 450 in 450B and 450B Limited, and which was funny because that was the best I've ever done at Loretta's was that year, and then for some reason I went back to a KTM and struggled a little bit, but like now I'm back on the Japanese bike, and like I feel really at home. Like I've done 3 days on Supercross, and like I said, at the compound it was everything was different. All on starting last Monday, everything felt different. I was on a Cowie, I was on a Supercross track, which I've only had maybe less than about a week before that Monday, and it was just on that 350 at Sandbox. So everything was different.
It's so funny because it's almost like
gear, boots.
We're not there yet. We're not.
Helmet.
We're not there yet. But it's so funny because you've been on a steel frame bike so long. Aiden's been on a steel frame bike for so long, and you guys get on these things, and it's like both of you say the same thing. Like you feel at home.
Yeah, I did. I really did. And part of it I think was mental because I was like, okay, everything's different. Like I said, I can't feel my foot pegs right now, like because I got brand new boots on. I can't. I can't. Do anything really. Like that feels comfortable. So it was almost a good thing because it's like I didn't have one thing on that Monday that I could focus on that felt different.
You didn't have like expectation.
No, I didn't have any expectation. And they made it easier on me, not putting any pressure on me to like go out there and send it on Supercross, and
which you should never do.
No, and I felt
do what Aiden did.
Right. Yeah.
So
I look back and see his visors.
So are you headed?
Come on. Dude.
So you go out there on that Monday and you're head to toe in Fox now, or
yep, head to toe in Fox. Nice. Yeah, and like like I said, as well as I gelled with the bike, I gelled with the gear. Like everything kind of just feels nice. I feel sick, and like when I go out there, I took a couple laps and like I was like, dang, like I think I can hit these whoops already, like pretty good, And they're pretty like starter whoops out there for right now, but every day they've made them a little bigger.
Right.
And
oh, you're lucky I'm not there anymore.
Yeah. Well,
I made big ones.
Yeah.
Well, they've been riding the bottom track right now because they're doing the.
So those are the same whoops I originally made.
Oh.
And because they haven't changed and they just keep building them up, but when I made those things, they were monsters.
Pointy boys.
Yeah. And we're lucky. Like they're grippy, and the other thing is like we got 4 or 5 dudes standing there, like, and when one little thing is like not right, they pull us off and be like, yo, like,
they'll tell you about it out there.
Yeah. Like Pooh and Burner. I've never really met Burner that much, but he's already been super helpful to me, and like Dookie's been great. Dookie's like always keeps me in check, and he's never, I don't know how much he's seen me ride prior to me being on the Kawasaki, but he already seems to have a pretty good eye on like when I'm maybe getting a little loose or a little tired. He's like, hey, let's back, like it's first week, like let's take it easy and make sure we're healthy, And I'm proud of myself too. Like I went into it with that mindset.
Right.
Like I didn't put any, it's a lot. Like, like I'm at, like I said, I feel really lucky to be in the position I'm in, and I'm at the premier. Like it doesn't get any better than the compound. Like there's how many of us that are there riding that place, and I'm one of them, and I feel super lucky. So when I went out there, I'm like, I'm not going to be better than Jet and Hunter out there, so I'm not going to impress anybody crazy.
That's an unreal expectation anyway.
Right.
But it was also not throwing the whole thing away in the first week.
Yeah.
That was our big thing.
As long as you get to the end of the week and you felt like you make some gains.
I got significantly better each day, and just like comfort wise, like I said, like the whoops and everything, like, and I'm thoroughly enjoying Supercross. That's big thing. I think I go out there every day, and it's like I know that by the end of the day, I'm gonna feel like I made gains. And after riding motocross like for so long, you know, when you get to that level of where I was at on a motocross track, it slows, right? Like the progress slows. You might see you're still getting better. You're training hard to get better, but you don't see the huge gains each day on a motocross track. It's like 0.25% maybe, or some days you feel like you go backwards.
Or like a couple tenths on a lap time.
Right. Yeah. If you're, that's where we're at that point. So yeah, whenever I go out on a Supercross track right now, every day I feel I'm like, okay, that was much better. Or, now I'm threeing this rhythm that I never thought I would.
Yeah. And I think it helps too, because you're out there with good company.
Yeah.
And you guys are going to get to the point to where somebody's going to push a certain situation, and you're going to learn through that, and it's going to be nothing but up from here.
Yeah. And it's funny too being on a team with Aiden, because he would probably say the same thing, but like in years back, we didn't exactly get along. Like we were not buddies.
He's hard to get along with. So
well, no, he's awesome now. Like he's like I really like being around him now, But back then, for some reason, I don't really think we ever had a good reason, probably. But we were just.
We both are growing up.
Yeah, it was just
you guys are growing up now.
Whatever,
Not grown up, but you guys are growing up, and you guys are getting a little more mature and older, and he's not as gangster as he used to be.
Yeah, right.
So
no, but he's awesome. Like I said, now I have no issues with we get along awesome. Yeah. But like I said in the past, it's just funny to be. I'm going into my first professional season as a dirt bike racer, and like with the kid that probably was like one of my worst enemies at the track growing up. And it's cool because I really like Aiden, and like we've always said this about me and Aiden. It's like he needs a little bit of what I got, and I need a little bit of what he's got. Right. At least me and my dad thought that, because Aiden's always been aggressive, right? Like
got heart.
Sends it. He's got the heart. Like, and I've always had the heart, but I doesn't, when I ride, it doesn't look like it. Like I don't really do a lot of moving around on the bike. I'm pretty smooth, and sometimes it looks like I'm going slower than I am because of the smoothness, and not always, but and I'm always trying to improve that. But it's just, if we can, I think it's awesome that the two of us are together, because if I can get the aggression that he has, and maybe if I help him smooth out a little bit, I don't, maybe we take things from each other.
Oh, I'm sure you will.
Works out, it works
I'm
out
sure
really
you will.
Good. Yeah,
I feel like that happens a lot though. Like when you get older, I mean, and I know it's happened with me a lot, but like, guys like that you race with, and you like never talk to each other, or you're at like amateur nationals and like never talk, like everybody's like always keeping to themselves and nobody's like really talking to each other. And then like all of a sudden you get like into like A class, and then especially when you get into pros, like, you just, everybody realizes like there's no reason to like be like that, and everybody's just kind of cool with each other. I mean, you still kind of have your guys that you don't really, talk to too much, but like for the most part, like I feel like people just kind of, I guess, gain an understanding that we're all just people, and we're all guys just racing dirt
I saw
bikes.
that in A class this year. I mean, like, there's kids that like I never talked to or anything, and then you're joking around on the starting gate at Loretta's, like
exactly.
It's where on an 85 you're all like,
oh, exactly.
You're like, who can be the gnarliest poker face right now?
Everybody's like keeping to themselves, and then now everybody's like kind of like just joshing around, or it's
lightens
like
up a little bit.
It's like that a lot too, and like the pro stuff, like especially like when like for like press days and stuff like that, like there's guys that like literally like have never talked to, never met them or anything like that, and they're like hucking it up. Everybody's like hucking it up and all that stuff, and then everybody goes out on the LCQ and is ready to kill each other. But you go out the very next week, and hey man, how's it going, dude?
It's done. It's over with.
Exactly. Yeah. People.
You're in the heat of the moment at the time. There is an upsetting situation, but then it's done.
I feel like
you have a job to do on the track. I mean, you all are aware of that. Like when you're a kid, you take it personal, or like.
I mean, look at Chad and James right now. They do long walks on the beach together. People get over it.
I don't know. You can like separate. You can like separate that. You mature and you separate.
I feel like from a team standpoint, though, like you guys know that everybody around you is doing their job too. Yeah. Like you've got Doogie there, Pooh, and one of the main reasons why I wanted to come out this week is because I was trying to make sure that we didn't go out and override it and, you know, the excitement, whatever. It's like, listen, you're not here to impress anybody, and you're not going to unimpress anybody.
Yeah.
You know, our deal is done. We're committed together. You know, let's focus on what we've got to do to get better and do that in a safe, smart progression to get through that. And then, you know, you get Aiden that goes out there day one and the whoops and wads it up. And I'm like, that's exactly what I'm talking about.
I don't know how he crashed. No offense, but I don't know. Those whoops, like, I don't know.
He missed
He
one.
must have been going.
He missed one.
He must have been
Shane,
going
you were
way
asking
too
about
fast.
kind of can I talk for like 30 seconds about how this whole thing finally came together?
Yeah.
So the plan.
Yeah, I asked him how Cole, how all this came about as far as
Go.
getting on the team.
Yeah, so the plan was actually to send Cole to East Coast Supercross through HPI Racing.
Okay.
Which, you know, I've never done that. I had no clue what I was doing, but I'm like, well, we'll get him there. We'll get him bikes
Figure
and
it
do what we
out.
need to do.
Yeah.
And then I actually had to leave Minneo's after Supercross. Had stuff going on with family, and we were going out of town. And then I guess you called me, didn't you,
Yeah,
RJ?
I called you first,
Said you
yeah.
had spoken with Cole, kind of talked with him a little bit about maybe what you guys were doing, and then called and discussed with us about, you know, whether we think it would work. And I'm like, yeah, I mean, you guys have mechanics, you've got the rig. I mean, everything's already set up. And the whole thing with HPI Racing is not like we're not making money at this. I mean, Future MX is not making money, obviously, what you're doing. The point is to help the riders. And I told Cole, I'm like, hey, whatever's best for you, I mean, that's what we want. We want what's best for the rider. So it was an awesome way to kind of partner up, and I'm excited about what Future MX is going to do.
For how fast it happened, it couldn't have happened better, I think. You know,
For
it's
you
perfect-
and
perfect
and the
timing.
Yeah, well, just not just for me, but also like the fact that it even worked out, like with how quickly because I don't even know that it was, especially for me, it wasn't even a thought until we were there.
I could tell you there is something about the Supercross community, and Scott, maybe you know this probably better than I do, but you know, Shane, you were in it for a long time, but this industry moves slow. I mean, when you are trying to get with somebody, you're trying to get contracts
No,
done.
let me tell you, it's
It's like pulling teeth.
yeah, it is. No, it truly is. And honestly, see, I'm that guy that will call somebody twice a day, three
Right.
times a day. I don't care. I will blow up. I will fill your voicemail. I will literally spam your email.
I wrote him
I
a
like-
check just to
I-
get him to quit calling me. I mean, it was,
Oh no! Come on, get it.
Hey, I like it because that's kind of what I do for work now.
Yeah, but I mean, that's how I am. And I'm sitting there, and we've obviously talked at Minneo's, and we're trying to work through how this is all going to pan out, and it's going to happen. And, you know, we talked to multiple people at the event that are willing to get on board and help with the team and the goals of what we have doing. And we're still, to this day, 2-3 weeks out now from Minneo's, and still don't have the commitments and contracts and
Yeah,
stuff in place that, you know,
it's-
people said that we were going to have. And it's like, man, that's probably one of the most frustrating things for me is like, you know, when we make a plan and we make an idea, like I want to go and I want to go now, you know, I mean, I want to get things done. I mean, we can't finalize our pit shirts until we finalize what sponsor is going to be on there.
Exactly.
And I can't finalize
Exactly.
the wrap on the semi until we figure out what sponsors are going to be on there. And it's a little frustrating at how slow some of that stuff moves. But overall, I mean, I do agree with Cole. I mean, we made a pretty quick transition. I mean, Matt and I were on the phone multiple times through the remainder of the week of Minneo's, and then even in the immediate week following. And you know, it went pretty fast in that aspect.
I was
mean,
texting you from the deer hunting stand.
Yeah.
Several times.
Yep.
Scared a couple off.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know,
Thanks.
that's the thing though, and you know, I will say, like, I had a little bit. My program wasn't exactly supposed to be my program going into 2023. I had a little bit of I had something else kind of that was in the works, and something that was promised, and you know, something else that was lined up. And man, I'll tell you, like, trying to like get that together, like, and trying to get information on what was going on, and you know, where bikes were coming from, like when they were coming, what people are we working with, like,
Oh, yeah.
you know, trying to figure out what was going on with that team just took forever. And like, I just couldn't get answers. And I understand that, you know, that it's, you know, it's not just necessarily the team, it's the people you're trying to get a hold of and trying to, like, you know, trying to work within those parameters. And it is like pulling teeth. It's
Well, a lot of
so
people don't
hard.
realize that a lot of those companies that we deal with are out of California.
Yeah,
So you have a
exactly.
3-hour time difference.
Yeah.
And I'm a very early riser because of my real job, you know,
Yes.
Monday through Friday. So
Yes.
when I'm up at 4 a.m. and the first thing that comes, you know, to my mind, I'm like, oh man, I need to email them right now.
Yeah.
Well,
Them
if
boys are still sleeping.
if I email, you know, if I leave it or if I send an email in Florida time at 5:30 in the morning, you know, that's 2:30 their time. And then here it is lunchtime and they probably haven't even seen it yet.
Yeah.
And I'm
Oh,
like, man, I need
exactly.
an answer. You know, I'd sent you this email 6 hours ago.
Yeah,
I need an answer.
Yeah, and you're waiting 3 hours, and you're like, what's wrong with these people? Well,
Yeah.
they just woke up, dude.
Yeah, and I've gotten very used to, and it's kind of funny because like now that, I mean, and like you said, like people that, you know, work in California, I work with a lot of people in California. So it's like, you know, or like I work with the guys at SHOT, you know, like, you know, this year I'm head to toe SHOT, which is, you know, I'll be the only rider out there that's going to be head to toe SHOT race gear. And, you know, the guys that I work with, they're over in France, you know, or they're over in Belgium. And so, you know, when I talk to them, they're hours ahead of me. So, you know, when I talk to him at lunchtime, you know, it's like, you know, evening time there, or like when I'm trying to pull stuff together, you know, with people in California, and it's like first thing in the morning in California, you know, where it's like, you know, I'm calling people at, you know, 12 or 1, you know, in, you know, here, and then there's people in California and it's like 10 o'clock, you know, it's like 9, 10 o'clock for them. And then I go and I talk to the guy at
They're
SHOT
still trying
Race
to finish
Gear.
their first cup of coffee.
Yeah, and the guys at SHOT, you know, the guy at SHOT Race Gear is, you know, already finished up supper and he's got a family and stuff like that. So, you know, but it's, you know, and that's the thing is.
But you're
like,
leaving them like 15 voicemails. Like, yo, answer your phone, bro.
Exactly. No, and that's the thing is, you know, pulling stuff together like that. It is really hard, and it's. I mean, that in itself is a full-time job. Trying to stay on people and trying to get answers is so hard.
Yep.
And it really is. It takes so much time and it takes so much effort. And it's, you know, and part of that is, you know, when you're trying to get those answers and you're trying to talk to the people, you know, and trying to, you know, like stuff with teams, like sometimes and like working with people or just trying to work with people in general, you know, sometimes like that stuff is just so slow. And you're right, the industry's so slow and everybody's, oh, well, we got this budget. We have to wait for this budget. We have to wait for this to go through. We have to wait for that. And, you know, and I will say that's something that I was even just dealing with, you know, not too long ago, you know, following outdoors. You know, for months I was trying to figure out what the heck was going on. And then, you know, deals change. And then, you know, I was like, heck with this. I'm just doing my own thing. And I literally ended up talking to Matt. And, you know, next thing I know, I mean, Matt's hopping on as title sponsor. And I literally had 75% of my program figured out. No lie, within 48 hours.
Yeah. That's very similar to how it went for us. I mean, we kind of knew the players that were going to be involved. We knew, you know, where we were going to go brand-wise, gear-wise. You know, it's fortunate for Cole. He's already been an Oakley, you know, athlete, you know, as far as goggles and eyewear.
Right.
So it just fit our program all together to make it happen. So that was very easy. But one thing before we continue talking about racing, I want to talk about Mr. Matt Bell, the whole HPI tax as far as the company goes.
Yeah.
What tax services could somebody benefit from reaching out to you, you know, especially when you have someone like Shane that hasn't done taxes in 15
Here
years?
we go again.
Oh, jeez. It's confidential. We won't talk about his stuff. But no, seriously. I mean, we actually do everything from 1040s all the way up to the most complex international tax returns. So, you know, you're talking about California or dealing with somebody in France. I think we have clients from 116 different countries that we actually do tax returns for. So it's kind of a specialization for us. That's kind of what put us on the map. But yeah, I mean, we do a lot of small business returns, and we've started to get into a lot more into the motocross community, riders. You know, I'm not going to throw names out there of people we do, but
Yep.
A lot of the pros, especially as they're getting started, you know, that's when you're coming from high school and then you're getting a 1099 from a team and you have no clue what you're going to do with it. That's how we help them set up the structures and get everything set up to where they're not getting killed with taxes at the end of the year. So Scott, I've been helping him out for a while.
Yep, absolutely.
Got to get with
keeps me out of trouble
Cole at
with
some
Uncle
point
Sam.
here. Yeah.
Well, and that's one of the things
I
that I
might
think.
get on his program.
Yeah. Get you with him.
I mean, I'm still here, am I? I'm not in federal prison, so.
Yeah.
Well, it's out there now in the universe, so hopefully they're not listening.
Yeah, his program
Yeah.
wasn't in the list from HPI
But
tax.
that was one of the conversations that I had, and I mentioned it earlier. Coop and I were at dinner, and I was talking to him that, you know, I don't feel like there's enough financial education in the sport of motocross for the people that do put so much into it. I mean, there's multiple people that I know that have pulled their kid out of school, or they've done very minimal school, whether it's online and, you know, just basically skate by and get, you know, possibly even their GED if they get it at all. But trying to tell somebody, you know, when you're at this level and now you start negotiating contracts, now you've got gear income, you got, you know, goggle income, you've got race income, from contingency money or Feld or MX Sports, whoever it may be, they don't know what to do with it.
Yeah.
So that's where HPI tax can come in and basically say, listen, you're going to have to show all the income that you've brought in, but then there's also a lot of expenses.
There's a lot of deductions. I mean, we got a refund for a rider last year who became part of a team and is getting a salary, and he expected to actually have to pay. And I'm like, hey, you don't owe anything. You're actually getting money back this year. So there's a lot of deductions that people don't think about that we can help with.
Right.
And even just, I mean, I'm not an attorney, but I've been in business for decades, and just looking at contracts. I mean, Cole and I were going over one that he had gotten from somebody, and we're kind of looking through it. I'm like, it's not really a great idea what you have going on here, and let's just talk about it. So even just general business items that people have questions about, I mean, that's what we're here for. We want to help the motocross community. Obviously, we're here to make money, feed our families, but we really want to help people get to the next level and get their tax stuff set to where they're not 10 years from now when they leave motocross, have the IRS breathing down their neck.
Yeah, well, and it's funny you said that too, because one of my jobs in my real role at my job at the drilling company is contracts. Going through our contracts with whether it's with the state or with the DEP and whatever, and reading through those contracts. And it's very similar, to what you just said. I mean, we go through and we take some contracts or offers that people have gotten before, and I go through them with a fine tooth comb. And at the same time, it actually it's learning for me. Because then I can see some of the verbiage and the language, and we've talked about it on multiple different episodes right now. The biggest thing I think sponsors that I've learned in this past year of having the Future MX side of things is the ROI.
Yeah.
So that's what a lot of sponsors are after right now is your ROI. And what are you going to do to be able to sell product for me? If I give you a $5,000 or a $10,000 or a $20,000 sponsorship, what is my ROI going to be?
Right.
And, your social media following matters. Like Scott, you mentioned that, your social media, your pit presence, your on the track and off the track presence, logo placement and what you're doing all the way around to try and get a product back to them to sell. And it's huge to be able to learn that. But I do appreciate that point where anybody that wants to reach out, even me personally, I would be happy to look at contracts, for anybody as far as team goes. I mean, I did it before, and just like you mentioned, there was a professional rider today that had an offer from 2 different teams, and we basically sat down and went through both contracts and said, if one might have a bigger name, but the actual deal is better with this one.
Yeah.
And ended up going that route. But either way, so HPI Tax, how can they reach out to HPI Tax? You guys have multiple locations throughout the state of Florida.
Yeah, we do. We have 5 locations. So probably, honestly, just send me an email or call the office. Office number is 863-968-1010, or email me at matt.bell@hbitax.com, or shoot me a message on Facebook or Instagram. Yeah, we'll get hooked up.
So get through any of those channels. I know we had somebody reach out to us the other day that I put the 3 of us in a group text, and they wanted to see if they could get on track with their taxes. So I sent them your number. So even if it's somebody that wants to reach out to us, we can easily refer, over to how to get a hold of Matt and everything that they're doing. But as far as, wrapping up the tax side of things into the HPI Racing side, this is probably one of the questions that I get the most right now, because this is all fairly new to all of us, is, how is the Future MX and HPI Racing thing going to go? And what I've tried to explain to people is basically Future MX is getting the title sponsorship of having HPI Racing, and Matt's coming on board, and I keep Matt very in the loop on emails, budgets, bank account stuff, everything that's going on. But at the same time, HPI Racing is still going to exist.
That's right.
And HPI Racing still has its amateur people that you guys support right now. And what is the goal as far as the amateur level of HPI Racing?
Yeah, so the way, I try to put it across to people. We have people, as you know, RJ, at all different levels. I mean, we got a kid who literally just left the beginner class and at local races and is racing C. And it was a kid who, he calls me Pops at the track. I mean, he's came to one of our camps, had a bike that was just absolutely beat. We wanted to help him get on a better bike. Great kid, great attitude, and he's a good kid to have around the pits. So, he's on the team. But the real goal is to get these guys, not necessarily to get to pro. I say guys and girls. We have Caitlin Lane, who's on the team, who's a great girls rider. She could win girls at Loretta's this year, I think. So, getting them to the next level, whatever that is. As you know, when you're in an amateur, sometimes you don't have the money to get the track time. You can't get a trainer. What we try to do for most of our riders is, unlimited track time. If you want to go train, we will pay for your training. We'll help you get parts for your bike. Some other riders didn't have bikes. We bought bikes for them. So we're like the Skittles team of amateur motocross because we've got some of every brand because they started with, Yamahas and gas and whatever it is. And we couldn't afford to go buy them all Kawasaki's. So we would buy them a bike to add on to what they had. But not just the skill side of it, but also kind of to guide them in life. I mean, one thing I think when I started this team, I thought my time was going to be spent buying parts for bikes and arranging training. And I think the majority of the time has honestly been kind of the counseling side of it with the families and the kids. And, you get to know these people. They're like families. It's like having 10 teenagers. I mean, I brought a couple of them into my house and they stayed for a week just to get them out of an environment they were in and try to get them back on the right track. So that's a big part of it for me. And trying to help them to know that we're going to try to pick things up a little bit to a more professional level. I mean, I think as these guys like Cole and Scott, when people watch this podcast, there's a different level of professionalism that we're trying to get these kids to understand. What you post on social media, how you act in the pits, who you're hanging around in the pits, that matters because
absolutely.
In fact, we're having a Zoom call tomorrow and the content of the call is HPI Racing is now hitching their wagon to Future MX. What you do for HPI Racing, I mean, we have Oakley as a sponsor of Future MX. We've got Fox. Like these guys are watching what's happening on the lower level of HPI Racing, and they want to make sure that the riders are doing what they want them to do. And so it's super important that they're following that kind of etiquette. And so I think it's a good thing. I think it'll help bring them
it's
up.
teaching a young mind a level of professionalism.
Yeah.
And how things are supposed to work.
Well, and I think
in business,
in the amateur world, though, I think that's one of the most unknowns. Like we've talked about it for a while. We even talked about doing it with Chris Johnson at the farm, is having a ride day where we can separate people between training and then bringing Pooh and Dookie in where they could educate people on mechanical side.
Yep.
But then even myself and Matt could come in and talk about the contractual side of things and then the expectations because. Right. When you go out and you say, man, I want to get sponsored by this person, and I'm just going to use Fox as an example. It's not just, I'm fast, give me free product. Fox is going to say, well, you got to do X amount of minimum posts per week and tag us in those posts. You have to have a professional appearance both on and off the track. And you have to have your whole package, pit presence and social media posts. I mean, people don't understand there is employees at those major companies, Oakley, Fox, whatever it may be. Even Step Up looks at our stuff. I mean, I did an email the other day with one of our great sponsors, No Toil, Ryan Jensen, helps us out with pre-oiled filters and sent a whole box of them to Minios for us, midweek when we started getting low. And he was like, yeah, I've been, keeping track on social media and following what you guys are doing. I mean, these people are watching.
They do.
And there is paid positions within those companies right now where their only job is to watch their athletes.
Yeah.
And anything related to their athletes. So even if you personally, as a rider listening to the show right now, even if you are not the one making the post, if you have a friend of yours that is making the post and they tag you in it and it's something inappropriate, that hurts. You know? And it could be a family member, it could be a buddy, it could be whoever. If you're related or affiliated with a post that's a negative post, that's an immediate turnoff.
Yeah. And we did the same thing when we hire somebody on the tax firm. The first thing I do is go to their Facebook and Instagram. And if I see stuff on there that's screwed up, I'm like, the resume goes in the trash. So I think people don't realize also that what you're posting on social media, that never goes away.
Right.
All somebody has to do is screenshot that. And then 20 years down the road, that can sink you if you're not careful. So.
Absolutely. I mean,
I can just chime in too. Like he was saying about, how it's not always about results or, how fast riders, like he said, he has a rider. I think I know who he's talking about, but he's got a rider that's, just coming out of beginner class and local stuff. Like it's important for those kids. And I've seen it in the team. Like, it's important for them to know how important obviously social media is, but also like let's say you don't even post on social media at all and you have no presence. Like if you're going to 3 or 4 big events a year, or and then you're constantly at the local track, if you're getting your name out there in the sport, and you're a young kid coming up. I know Scott, like I've not known him super well, but I've known him for a long time, and I promise you, him being the type of person he is, and I'm young, like I'm not saying I have like all this wisdom or anything, but I can see it with him. Like he's gotten the sponsors and the help and the stuff that he's been able to accomplish by being a good person,
right.
And I think it's important for what he's doing for these younger kids that are coming up is like, they might not even ever be able to make it to Loretta's. Who knows,
right.
But let's say they're a really good person. They start, putting themselves out there, as a good person. They start a YouTube channel. There's a lot of guys out there that make a big living on YouTube and stuff like that, and they're not the fastest rider on a dirt bike,
Sure.
but they just are a good person, and people know them as that.
Yep.
Well,
So
listen,
that's
I
a huge thing that he's doing, is making like these kids understand that.
Well, you
So I
think about
it's
how
good.
many amateur motocross riders there are. I mean, look at the week of Minios.
Yeah.
How many people were there?
Yeah.
I
don't even know.
Well,
6,500 entries?
yeah.
Yeah,
something like that.
like 7,000 entries. Yeah.
You only have 20 spots or 22 spots on a Supercross Saturday night in the main event. Yeah. And out of those 22 spots, probably only the top 10 are making enough money on a contract ride or whatever it may be to continue to do that and put money in the bank and not have to have some type of career after racing, right? So that's a very, very small margin. That's a very small number. It's just like being professional football or professional baseball. I mean, you go to a little league on a Saturday and you see hundreds and hundreds of kids playing at the local little league, but to get to that professional level where you're actually making money, that you're going to have a career and you're going to retire and you don't have to do anything the rest of your life, is such a small percentage. To have that education and wisdom of the skill set that Matt's talking about right now would carry someone throughout life.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of more, if I'm not mistaken, that's kind of more of what HPI Racing is about, is,
Exactly.
helping people individually through different situations. Doesn't necessarily I think HPI is not necessarily worried about taking a title contending elite level rider and trying to make him a pro racer.
Right.
It's trying to take somebody that they believe that you guys are choosing to help in whatever different dimension that may be, whether it's just with some parts here or gate entries or travel money to the races or a dirt bike. I mean, that's all contingent on what, they see fit. But, you're trying to impact somebody's life, whether it's through the ministry side, whether it's through personal counseling, and even, support just getting to a racetrack. Whereas the Future MX side, it's hard because, my wife and I've had this conversation before, and I've pretty much made it very clear that I am not going to be the guy that gets in, to somebody's personal life, because I have enough stuff going on in my own personal life. I'm going to try and take somebody at that elite level. And I think that's where, Matt and I kind of got together and kind of could see that eye to eye, that, it's almost two different levels of what we're trying to do here. And I fully respect everything that Matt's done. He's helped quite a few people and is going to continue to do that. But in the same side with the Future MX stuff, we, again, you talked about having multiple Skittles,
Yeah.
There's so many different brands of bikes. There's so many different things, for us, we want to be the premier elite level, transition from amateur into pro racing. And we want to be able to give somebody the ability to go race pro racing. And then what they do with it on that is on them.
Yeah.
But at least we know that they've had every opportunity that we could provide to get them there. And I think that's been the motto and the whole reason why Future MX has the name that it has, is to give someone a future in motocross that has the opportunity to make it professional, but might not have all the means to get there. So we take those elite level amateur guys that can go, to the pro level and make that transition for them. And then once they get in there, they kind of.
And that doesn't necessarily have to do with race results either. Like a guy like Aiden might go to the races and develop a relationship with some guy that can set him up on a career in the future. It just, the more people you get in front of and the more you communicate with people, stuff happens.
Yeah, good. I mean, you want the results, obviously.
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of like with HPI. I mean, with our company, I mean, I never want to fire somebody, but if they're not performing
Right.
or they're not doing what they're supposed to be doing, we have to make the hard decision of saying, you're out.
Right.
But, you're right. I think teaching kids and the riders that motocross is a snapshot of how you're going to live life. If you give up on the motocross track, you're going to give up on life.
Right.
If you're posting stupid stuff on social media when you're part of HPI Racing, you're going to do stupid stuff throughout life. So it's trying to guide them and get them on the right track. And some of those guys, I mean, I think we've got 1 or 2 or 3 that have the potential to step up to future MX at some point. I mean, I really do. But that's going to be on them if that happens. It's going to be on performance, and we'll have that discussion at some point in the future. But it does give them a path to get there if they want to.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of value in guidance. There's a lot of value in guidance, to be a better person, to be a better representer, to be the best person that you can be, regardless of whether it's your personal relationship, your relationship with family, your relationship in religion, your presence on the track as well. It's all of that ties together, and there's a huge importance on that, and there's a huge importance on especially like when you get into where like Aiden and Cole are, it's you have to really make sure that you're carrying yourself, and and it's true, like those companies are watching.
Yep.
They watch every single little thing, and a perfect example, a long time ago, not by my own doing, but I was told, the folks I was working with, they were running Pro Circuit exhausts, but, going into another part of the year, I was told about reaching out to Bill's Pipes. So I did, and I reached out to Bill's Pipes, got set up with Bill's Pipes. They sent a pipe. I posted, Pro Circuit doesn't even follow me. Right. This was like back when I literally didn't even have like 2,000 Instagram followers. And I made a post about Bill's Pipes. Pro Circuit talked to the people that I was working with and said, hey, this is breaking contract. This is not okay. Like, you need to fix this. And I was kind of caught on the short end of the stick with all that because I obviously did not know. But it's, the way that you conduct yourself, making sure that you follow through on things that you're supposed to, your obligations, making sure that you represent yourself and the people that you work with at the highest capacity possible, and, and being able to carry yourself through life. And it's, you put it well where, your reflection, on the dirt bike and what you do in motocross, it can translate into life. And motocross is a really, really great teacher of life. And it's, especially when you go into racing, because it's just so cutthroat, and that is how life is. Life can be really cutthroat. It's and time keeps ticking forward and it doesn't ever stop. And the eyes are always on you. No matter what you're doing. So I will say, as a side note, I know that I enjoy working with Matt. More than just him being just a great guy, and for what he does for me, but for what he does for other people is really quite incredible. And being able to guide people and give them guidance and be able to, if someone doesn't quite understand the importance of it, and being like, hey, if this is what you want to do, you need to be making sure that you conduct yourself this way. But overall, just guiding people on how to be, a little bit more, a better version of themselves.
Well, I think one of the biggest things that you started off with there is being a representative of those brands.
Yes,
you
represent them.
If you're wearing a pit shirt that has all those brands on the sleeve, on the chest, on the back, whatever it may be,
you are representation for them.
You are affiliated.
Yes,
and if
absolutely.
you do something and you put up, I hate saying it, but if you put up a stupid TikTok video, where you think you're being funny and goofy because you want to get views, if that gets in the wrong hands, you're out.
You're
out.
Well,
I mean,
not only social media, but creating a good foundation for a young child within the motocross world. Say they make it to the professional side of things.
Yep.
There's a lot of wolves in this sport.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, there are.
there's a lot of wolves, there's a lot of distractions, and if they have a good base, then they're at least at that point they're going to be professional enough to be like, maybe this isn't a good idea.
Well, remember we talked about in the last episode with Savachi, which I didn't even realize, and Scott just brought it up too, but the whole breach of contract thing. Yeah. You know, he switched a goggle at the second round of Supercross, and it was only in the untimed free practice, and somebody took a picture of it.
And then put them on a poster.
And then put it online.
Put them on a poster
on a billboard.
Overseas.
Yeah. Didn't he say that it ended up costing him like $50,000?
Yeah.
For a breach of contract fine.
Yikes.
Yeah.
You know, so that's something that you don't even think about. It's like, oh, well, today we're going to switch gear companies mid-season.
That's why you're supposed to put the strap
you better look at what
on
that
the
contract
goggle.
says.
That's why you're supposed to put the strap on the goggle of your current sponsor.
Yeah. Well, the point is with that, though, is that, you know, knowing what your contracts, understanding your contracts, you know, being able to know what happens with that. And then if you do go in violation of your contract, I mean, there is so much verbiage in these contracts right now. I mean, I got to see a few of them here lately, and one of the contracts basically point blank says, like, you can't talk negatively about the team, you can't talk negatively about the bike, you know, you can't do anything. So, you know, if you go off in any type of, whether it's social media online or whether it's a podcast or an interview or whatever, I mean, if you say something negative about the team or about the bike, you're fined.
Yeah.
You're out. I mean, it's just that simple. I mean, and I'm not saying that's right or wrong, but my point is understanding your contracts, understanding that you are representative of each of those brands.
Absolutely.
You know, that stuff does matter. But I do want to go back to one of the things, though, that Scott brought up about reach and followers and things like that. Shane, you and I have talked about this over the last 2 weeks on each episode for the past 2 episodes. You know, we went into Minios basically bare bones. I mean, we
had some following.
A couple hundred. I mean, that's legitimate going into Minios. I mean, we started the YouTube channel about a month, 2 months before. I'm looking at Tyler Kosher because he's the one that kind of handles our production side of things. We started a TikTok, I think, 2 weeks before Minios even happened. But as of this morning, and we've talked about over the last 2 episodes, last week we were right around 600,000 on our reach. As of this morning, we were 842,000
from last week
on our reach. No, not from last week. I'm talking about.
We grew 200,000 from last week, is what you're saying.
And our followers are now up to 8,540.
Nice.
Across those different platforms. And I mean, we went into Minios with a couple hundred.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
You know, so to have that kind of increase, I mean, I'm hoping that by our next episode next week, which is going to have one of the heaviest hitters that we've ever had on our podcast. So I'm looking forward to that one. I'm not going to announce it yet, but we're going to have a heavy hitter come on, factory rider, next week in studio. I'm hoping that by the time next week's episode happens or gets recorded, that we will be over 1 million.
Wow, that's incredible.
That would be our goal. And I think
that's across all the platforms, right?
Yeah, we have multiple different platforms. I mean, we have an Instagram account, we have our Facebook, we have our YouTube channel, and then our TikTok. And right now, our TikTok seems to be one of the hottest tickets right now. We've had 2 videos that have just ended up almost going viral. I don't know really what is considered or defined as viral, but
I don't know either.
we've got two videos that
I don't have a TikTok.
over 300,000 views on both videos. You know, so we're at like 600,000 views there, and then our TikTok following is huge, which, you know, we bring up age and things like that. I mean, I never wanted a TikTok. You know, I never really wanted to have TikTok on my phone, but it's one of those things right now it's one of the hottest social media platforms out in today's market. Yeah. And if there's an opportunity to get, you know, our bikes and our riders out in front of them. I mean, the video of Cole going through the whoops in slow motion, I think the views on that was like 25,000 people in a day.
Really? Yeah, watching you, bud. Watching you.
And that's even following up on like making sure that you have everything right, and like that's crazy. Like Savachi getting fined for that, like, and that's like, you know, for me, like I got to really make sure that I'm careful with, you know, the stuff that I'm wearing, with the contracts that I have coming up and stuff like that, and making sure that everything's current, because like, you know, I've had quite a few times where I'm reaching just on Instagram alone over 1.6 million people, over 1.6 million accounts in a month, a single month.
Right.
You know, like, and it's crazy. Like you have to just be so mindful of that stuff.
Sure.
You know, and there's so much value in it, you know, that's, you know, it's like literally, I mean, you know, one of my most viewed videos is me doing an oppo at the farm, Dade City. And I have a GoPro on. So it's like you can't even see it's all you can see is literally my front fender, the front wheel, you know, and literally the Mika or Micah bar pad right there. but it's stuff like that is so important with making sure that you have everything set up right and that you're doing right by your people and that you're representing well. So
and making sure that the people are paying attention, because I didn't even catch it myself. I just got brand new graphics printed from Step Up MX. They did a great job. They've changed around our format and our structure a little bit on our template. And as soon as Cole walks in the door, Cole's like, well, we got to get rid of that one. I was like, oh man, I didn't even think about that.
Oh, did y'all get new numbers?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, Step Up's done a great job with for HPI. All of our canopies, in fact, that flags, canopies, graphics they're doing for us. So
yeah,
it's been great.
Troy and Wes have done a great job for us, and they just sent us brand new stuff. I got it on Friday when I got back in town, and I laid it on the table, and I was showing Cole right when he got here before the episode started, and he was like, we got to get rid of that logo. I was like, man, how did I not catch that?
Magic marker.
How did I even think about that?
Permanent marker.
Sharpie.
Or electrical tape.
Electrical tape. They're good.
No, you put a piece of silver duct tape over it, and then you write in a new sponsor.
Yeah. Well, we'll
Didn't
figure
you
it
do
out.
that?
I mean, because we do have a photo shoot coming up, so we'll figure it out.
I will admit I did do that.
You put duct tape over a sponsor and wrote.
Okay, listen. I'm gonna slow this down real quick. There's good reason for this, because I had somebody that had pledged, a full year into my program, a cash deal, a good cash deal, and so
that doesn't happen.
Well, and it was literally everything short of a check being sent. And I'm a handshake guy.
Right.
I'm a gentleman's contract type of person.
Same way this sport truly goes that way.
And the thing is if I tell you I'm going to do something, I will follow through on it. Absolutely. And if I can't, I'm going to be 100% honest with you, and I'm going to give you a dang good reason why it is that I can't follow through on my end. But I had someone be really shady, and it was and I had their logo and everything on the graphics for outdoors and stuff like that, and literally, I kid you not, I was about to leave for Paula, and the guy blocked my number. I swear.
Nice.
So I put right where his spot was, silver piece of duct tape, that said student loans.
Nice.
Because the money that I was supposed to get from the sponsor, I ended up having to comp with my own refund from student loans, to be able to support myself.
Nice.
So yeah, no, that was a Scott Meshey stamped approval. I mean, it's not something that I want to do, and that's not really something that I don't think I've ever done. But that was a very rare occasion where people didn't follow through.
Well, and that's one of the things.
Well, they would do it to you, I would imagine, if you didn't follow through on something. So it's like, what's the difference?
Well,
and that's probably been one of my biggest, kind of concerns as far as being a team owner and having somebody that commits to something, because I'm very similar to you, Scott. The fact that handshake deals and a lot of the logos that are on our bike right now, there's no written contract.
You shake my hand.
It's it.
That's ironclad.
Yeah, we're locked in, and I'm going to treat you like family.
Absolutely, 100%.
And that's what I do. And it kind of got brought up. A good friend of ours, actually Dave Dukey, introduced me to her, is Courtney Keller. And Courtney is an attorney in Orlando, and she handles contracts, quite a bit. So one of my questions to her, which, I'm going to communicate with her this week, but one of my questions is when you get a commitment from somebody that says, we're going to do this.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, even if it is in writing, well, what happens if they don't? Because that happens in the sport all the time.
If they don't?
Right. If we have upheld every end of our contract on our end, whether it's, you have to have the truck at X amount of races, or you have to have X amount of riders, whatever it may be, if we have upheld our end of the contract and they don't pay, then
what do you do?
What do we do? Because we have built budgets. I mean, Matt and I talk about budgets daily. I mean, that is the biggest thing right now. I mean, when you have monthly expenses going out between mechanics, practice fees, wear items as far as chains, sprockets, tires, there is a monthly budget that goes in, even when you're not going racing.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean,
100%.
the season, Cole and Aiden aren't supposed to start till February 4th? Mm-hmm. And that's Houston?
Yep.
There's a lot of money that's going out the door between now and February 4th. I guarantee you that.
Hey, I totally get it.
Can you do
the sprockets and chains on the 450? Whew. Oh, man. It's every week.
Can you do a lean process?
I don't know.
Because I deal with a lot of leans with my work.
I think you'd have to not an attorney. I think you'd have to sue them and then you'd have to get a judgment, and then you could put a lien on them.
Yeah, but even that though, going through the process
It's
of trying to sue
expensive.
somebody
That's
and having
lengthy. That's just
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
it's going
There's
to
only
cost
so
you.
many-
It's 20 to 50 grand to sue somebody, even for something simple.
Yeah, and that might not even be what
and
the
attorney's
contract's
fees.
worth.
Yeah, I was gonna
I mean, the contract might only be worth 50. So then, what's the point of trying to go after them if the sponsor's only worth 50? Like, it just doesn't.
Yeah,
So I've got to talk to Courtney does that a lot in her industry and what she does. So I mean, she and I talked about it a little bit before, but I'm gonna have to circle back on that. But I think that's the biggest fear for me is like Matt and I've talked about is if you offer the world to multiple different people.
Absolutely.
Okay. So, I mean, let's be honest. That's what we've done on this episode. Every episode on these podcasts, I've been a very open book to try and give people an insight to what it is to run a race team.
Yeah.
And right now we've got, Cole, Aiden, Drew Adams, and Carson Wood.
Mm-hmm.
Each of them very similar to Matt with his team with HPI Racing. Each of them are supported on different levels, whether it's
Right.
compound, bike, parts, cleaning, mechanics.
Yep.
All of that costs money.
It does.
And that money is going out, and there's signed contracts that are written that we have to execute on our end.
Yep.
And basically, myself, Matt, and our partner in this, basically Brian, we said, we've got to be able to do everything we can to commit to get through this year, no matter how we've got to get through it. But our goal with building the podcast and the team and getting the semi and the impression that we made at Minios and continue to increase those impressions throughout the year, hopefully at the end of this season, there's somebody that comes on board and says, hey, you guys have done a fantastic job. We love what you're doing. We want to be a part of it, and we want to sponsor you with, X amount of dollars, whether it's a Rocky Mountain or a Motorsport or a Chaparral or whoever. I mean, a progressive, it could be anybody.
Absolutely.
If we get somebody that comes in and says, we want to, sponsor the team and keep you guys doing what you're doing, then that's great. Because I can tell you, it's a very, very much so a financial burden, a financial stress on us to be able to do what we are doing. But even looking at your story and what you're talking about of being your own mechanic, being your own social media follower, being your own transport driver.
Yeah.
Cole, I think you got it made, bud.
Yeah, I do now.
factory
Yeah,
guy
I mean,
over
I
here.
was that guy this year.
And
the whole year.
I will tell you though, and not only that, but to be able to work with people that that you can trust, it's huge.
Oh, yeah.
And being able to get that kind of support is huge. I mean, that's it's so
hard to come
uncommon.
by.
It's
Yeah.
about relationships.
It absolutely is.
That's what I was trying to say earlier. Was like I'm not like being cocky or anything, but I think I've definitely made some relationships just being who I am, and tried to just be the best person I can be. I mean, a lot of the stuff, like I've been coaching, doing, that's like my little side thing I do is coaching, and I've been doing that for probably over 3 years now, and I've gotten a lot of opportunities through that, like just helping kids get better on a dirt bike, and I've had parents want to help me with my racing because of that, and like stuff like that's huge, and it all comes from just being myself, like just doing my thing.
What sold me on you is the fact that you actually took the time out of your day to drive out to Skytop to meet with me and talk with me. Like if you didn't do that, I mean, we may not be sitting here, and that's just because you do business with people that you like, and that meant a lot to me.
That means something.
Yeah.
Absolutely. No, and I do. And one thing while we're talking about that, though, where you talked about people that have been around you or whatever, I mean, if there is anybody that is willing or interested, I know Matt had somebody reach out to him this week that we're talking to about coming on to the team. If there's anybody listening to the podcast or anybody that knows of someone that would like to come in and try and help, because, I mean, truthfully, like I just mentioned, it is a very much a hefty financial burden to be able to do what we're doing. And if there is somebody that would be willing to come on board and wants, some type of sponsorship package, we are very fortunate to be able to build a custom sponsorship package because we're not tied with a manufacturer or a corporate, entity where we have the ability to get creative, whether it's a podcast sponsor, whether it's a one race sponsorship,
That's what I was gonna say. We can do like anything, we can do one post, one anything, like, so even with me, like I have different packages too, like as my own sole thing, and like helping me solely is going to help the team. So like, I mean, I'd love to have whoever it is, just be a part of the team too. But like, that's a thing that's always an opportunity is like, race to race or, event to event or whatever it may
Yeah,
be.
and I've even thought about doing some of those, like VIP stuff. I know they do it with other teams. I know Chad used to do it. I mean, Shane, you and I talked about that for a long time. Where if somebody wants to go to a specific round of East Coast Supercross and they want to get in, and we can make sure they get credentials or get tickets to the race, and they can come in and be part of the team for that weekend. Where they're inside the semi and. Obviously we have to limit the amount of people that is because we can't have too many people inside there, but we could easily do that for a round.
You don't know how important it is for people to have a place to come sit down.
Future MX VIP experience.
Sit down, maybe have a little bit of dinner and go watch the race. That's huge.
And I mean,
people.
if we can have somebody come in for the day where they get to be a part of it all the way from the beginning, through track walk, through practice, through, the night program, and they've got the ability to come and go from the truck and get tickets to the event. We can make sure that they enjoy it and, give them some swag pack and things like that. I mean, that's that. Trust me, any way that we can do that, I would be all for it. But
basically tell us how you want to be a part of it, and we'll make something.
Right, and that's
we'll
the
make
thing.
A package out of it.
If I may say, if it's acceptable as well from on my side.
Yeah.
If like I said before, I mean, I still have places in my own program as well that I have that are open to people. If there's people that are interested in partnering with my own stuff, obviously on my own socials, you can just search Scott Meshie. I'm probably going to be changing my Instagram handle here in the next couple days because I'm not number 84 anymore. But I have my own program as well that I work with, and kind of have my own side of things. Not with the guys at Future MX. I mean, they definitely have a really great program that they're running, and have a really awesome sense of representation. If you're looking for something more kind of soul, within one rider, and within the 450 class, and with the full outdoor series, and with the intention of qualifying for the World Super Motocross, that's something that I'm doing. So that's 28 rounds, and that's Supercross, East and West in 450, and then trying to qualify for that World Super Motocross. And like I said, the biggest thing is, for me, I'm trying to partner with people that are either closely aligned with the sport is something that I try to go with, or people that have a love for the sport, and someone that can benefit from being within the sport and becoming a go-to in the sport. Or to be able to breach a new market segment, because motorsports and especially Supercross and Motocross, it is so closely aligned, with so many other motorsports, and not only that, but like fitness, and honestly, anything from recovery, fitness, any type of dirt bikes, motorcycles, anything that has to do with the functions that we do, which we do just about literally everything. When it comes to what goes into, making it into the main event, we handle just about everything, and we're so closely aligned with so many markets. If someone's interested in doing that as well, of course, you can always search my Instagram and my social media under Scott Meshie, and of course, you can always email me at mesheyracing@gmail.com.
Yeah, we actually had that same conversation with Savachi last week. Savachi's trying to kind of put together his program of what he's going to do for the year and things like that. And, we mentioned to him, if anybody wanted to reach out to him, obviously they can do that too. But, this is a platform to do that. We're going to use this room and this studio and the Legends room right here to give people a voice in the sport of motocross, to be able to talk about it, whether it's on the amateur side of things or in the professional side, because we do dabble in both, and there's not many other podcasts out there that do dabble in both. Most of the other podcasts that are there are pretty much more solely on the pro side.
Right.
But with us helping people in the amateur side, like Carson Wood and Drew Adams, and even the HPI Racing and their amateur riders, which you guys, have quite a few of them. We've mentioned a few of them throughout this episode. But, on the pro side too, we're going to go watch and be a part of some of the pro stuff this year. So any opportunity, Scott, that you have that you want to come on the show, man, we'd love to have you on here.
Well, I'm certainly really appreciative to be able to have this opportunity to come on, and of course, always really happy to be able to meet good people, meet people within the industry, and just be able to surround myself with good people. That's huge, and that's part of what makes what I do possible. Is surrounding myself with good people, and honestly, the biggest thing is that I, especially this going into this year, is working with quality people.
Sure.
Quality people, quality brands. How can I give back? That's the biggest thing for me. And I really love that you talked earlier about ROI.
Yeah.
For me, like when I talk with people, it's, I'm not just trying to ask for something.
Yeah. Give me.
I'm for me, my thing is always, well, here's what I can do for you.
Right, you're offering a return.
Yeah, I'm absolutely. That's for me. That's my thing. Is well, this is what I can give to you. This is the dollar amount of value. This is what this looks like. I can look at this type of commitment. I can give you this space on the bike, which I still have space on the bike. I can still make that kind of thing happen. I want to work closely with people to give them the most ROI possible.
Yep.
So it's something, and it does take a lot, I will say, it does take a lot. And I, regardless of how, the program is, if it's, obviously just trying to make sure that we have everything that we need, it's going to look extremely professional. I'm really happy with going into this year because it's, the folks that I'm working with at Supercross, we're going to have, a 10 by 20 setup. Just for my area alone, everything is going to be customized. Everything is going to be professional. Of course, pit shirts is minimum. We're going to have our own custom backdrops, working with the guys at Matrix. We're going to have toolbox, custom wrapped, the stand's going to be custom wrapped, the Matrix, the floor mats, stuff like that. Everything that we do from end to end is going to look professional, and as well as on the bike, of course, just about every round, we're looking to make sure that the bike is looking as clean as it possibly can. And we're going to make sure that the people that are, represented on the bike and people that are represented through my program are always going to be, it's always going to be visual. They're always going to be seen. It's literally going to be in people's faces so much that you cannot forget the name.
Right. Brand recognition.
100%. Absolutely.
And brand recognition matters. And that stuff is extremely critical in building a brand and going forward. But one thing, Scott, while I've got you on the microphone right now.
Absolutely.
Give me the 2023 expectations. What's the goals?
Actually, I will say, because as a pro racer, of course, you're always climbing. And no matter what stage you're at, you're always climbing. I will say this year, I had some really reasonable, expectations for myself and goals. And what kind of stinks is I really didn't get I followed through on some of them. I did not expect myself to go into 450 Supercross, but I wanted to make 450 Supercross mains, and I did that. But unfortunately with an injury, for outdoors, and I was out for most of outdoors, I fractured the bottom of my tibia and, bruised my talus really badly. And I was out for a long time, and it's still, it's an injury that just kind of, hangs around. Obviously it doesn't bother me anymore. It doesn't give me any problems, but it's something that took a long time to heal. I was even looking to try and lower my 2-digit number, but now I go back to a 3-digit because I wasn't at the races and I wasn't getting the points. But for this year, I really...
Can you announce what number it's going to be or not yet?
We are number 411.
Really?
So listen. So now. I was gonna say. Yeah. And the thing is I started off number 441, and I wanted to go back to that so badly. But there, I will say, I'm a little bit of a spiritual guy, and I will say, 411, it's a number that talks about new chapters and new beginnings. And I've had a lot of that for myself, and it's something that I'm really proud of, and it's something that I am really looking forward to, a new chapter. First time 450, full season, and, going into YouTube, we're going to give the 411 on the 411.
There you go.
That's going to be the new thing. So that's, when you are looking at my Instagram, you're looking at, my YouTube, anything like that, you're going to get the 411 on what's going on with the 411.
There you go.
And, but
nice
for
little pitch there.
Yeah. And so what, the biggest thing is, I really want to make sure that I'm getting in on main events every single time. And I know that at the beginning of the season that's usually a little bit hard until things kind of thin up a little bit. But honestly, the way that I've been riding on Supercross on this 450, it really suits how I ride in general. And honestly, the confidence that I've been feeling and, kind of the sense of mental clarity that I have, I really truly believe that I will be a main event contender every single race.
There you go.
And I...
So then we need to put that on our fantasy radar.
Honestly, I would say that I feel confident that you could.
Okay.
I feel very confident.
Well, there you go. You heard it here.
And you know what? I will tell you one thing. If you're going to choose your picks, while qualifying is going on, I know that I am not the best qualifier, but I will tell you what, when the gate drops, the BS stops, and that's when it's time to get stuff done. And that's,
might have a little sleeper pick there, Shaner.
For me, I want to be getting points every single round.
Yeah.
That's my thing is I want to get points every single round. I am shooting heavily for that World Super Motocross. Heavily.
Yeah.
Because it's, it's not really just about the purse. It's a great way to make money, but man, I know that I can be in it. And I know that if I give myself the opportunity by giving myself as many points as I can throughout the season, that I'm going to put myself in that place, and then come outdoors, I want to be putting myself back in those top 15s like I have been. And I want to, break into the top 10. I've had, a couple instances where I've been close to top 10. I've been able to run top 10 speed, just do something stupid like hitting false neutral in a corner and literally getting my leg stuck under the bike for a minute, or, having an asthma attack. That's...
Those aren't good.
No, they're not fun. But thankfully that stuff's all sorted out. But, it's, I want to be able to be breaking into, in Supercross, I want to be main events consistently. And then I want to see about trying to break into top 15s, and in outdoors, I want to be top 15s consistently, period. Because I know for a fact that I can do that, and I know how to do that, and I know that I will have the equipment under me to do that. And by the end of the pro motocross season, I expect myself to be at least breaking some top 10s, because I know that that's something that's very realistic. I'm a great starter, and heck, literally at Paula at the last round, I was as sick as a dog, and in 100 and some degree heat, and I had ripped a whole shot from the outside, like literally the very outside gate, because the moto before I came off the track and I was throwing up. And I literally threw up in kind of gross in my helmet in Moto 1 at Paula, because no, it was a terrible experience. But I went out for Moto 2 and, was able to do a bit better, but, and I want to be able to go back to that 2-digit number, and I want to make sure that I want to put myself at least in the 60s. And I want to be able to qualify for that World Super Motocross. I know that I can, and I know that there's no reason not to. So, and running 450 the whole season, I know that I'm going to be really comfortable on the bike. I know that I'm going to give myself the best opportunity for success by being there every single weekend, and obviously being smart and being, using my head to make sure that I'm there at every single round. That's a huge thing. So for me, that's kind of an outline of my goals.
Well, we're going to be rooting for you on that.
I appreciate
we want
that.
to see
What brand are you riding?
I am riding Huskies, and I'm not going to the new platform.
No?
Yeah.
I am not doing it. No, I'm staying with the 22s. I have a really, really great setup on the 22s.
Yeah.
Working with the folks at Ride Engineering with their linkage systems and their triple clamps, and working with the folks at Olin's. Olin's has been a supporter of mine for a while, and they've been really fantastic. And we've been able to have some really amazing setups, and we're about to be doing some testing this coming week. Yeah. And I've been riding really great, and and that's just from the start of our suspension setup, let alone really being able to do testing and getting things where they need to be, which is what we're about to do. So I feel extremely confident in the setup. I know the equipment that's underneath me. There is no transition period with that. There's no guesswork. It's simply, we already know what it is that we need to start with, and then we're going to go from there. you know, and I know that bike that's between my legs, and I know how to ride it. So.
Sure. Well, that's good, man. It's good goals. I mean, that's something that we're going to support you, and then
appreciate it.
Look forward to seeing you go throughout the series, both series, and possibly the World Super Motocross stuff also. But Cole, at the same time, I want to bounce that same question that Scott just answered over to you. I mean, are we allowed to talk about the number yet? Or are we going to wait for the photo shoot, or what?
The racing number?
Yeah.
I don't know.
I don't know, man.
Let's leave it. It's a big deal.
It is a big deal.
Yeah.
Listen, first
leave it up for the
first
photo
pro
shoot.
numbers is such a cool.
Yeah. I think we'll just wait then.
Big unveil.
So we're gonna try to do a team photo shoot here in the next week or two. We just got the new graphics in, which obviously, like we talked about already, we got to change a couple logos that I forgot about. But the new number is here. But we're gonna save it for the unveiling of the photo shoot.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea. I think it'd be cool.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the same question that we asked Scott. What is, I mean, give a realistic expectation on 2023.
3 wins, probably championship. No, I mean, I want to be, like he said, I want to be at every round. So obviously the off season right now is about, learning every day and being safe. But just to get right to the point, like I want to make the night show. I really have no idea. That's the thing. It's hard to have an expectation when I have no idea what it's like.
Sure.
Obviously you hear it's gnarly and you hear everybody's fast. And
Well, that's why the excitement's so big for A1, because you have no idea where everybody else is at.
Right. And then same with East Coast, because those guys don't ride till that first round. So it's like, for me, like I don't know if I'm setting the bar way too low or way too high, but I don't really care. I just want to get into the night show. And I think if I stay healthy and if I keep progressing the way that I have been, I think it is realistic to make, a or if not a few mains throughout the year. I don't know.
I think that's very realistic.
That's
honestly.
the thing. It's hard when you don't have any idea what the whole experience is like.
Starts are everything.
Yeah.
That's the biggest thing.
And I was a great starter this year. In obviously it's not Supercross, it's but in pro sport classes and everything. I did a lot of pro-ams, which I did a ton of pro-ams this year. Which is, a lot of the time I'm racing against guys that I'll be racing at, this past or, next year. So I think it's realistic to try to get into the night show and to also, if I'm feeling it at some rounds, get into the main. I think that's.
I would agree with that 100%. I think even as far as the team goes, when you talk about how much effort and stress, both financially, mentally, that we're going through to pull all this stuff off to go there. Yeah. I think there's a realistic expectation for you and Aiden both to be able to make the night show at every round. I don't think that's an unrealistic goal. I think making the night show, even watching you on Supercross this week, I think that's very realistic. Now, as far as making the mains go, I definitely think that's one of those things where you're gonna have to see where you stack up when you get there.
Yeah,
but I think those are realistic too. I mean, I think that you guys, looking at the people that you've both kind of been around and battled with, and people at Minios and things of that nature, and even looking at Aiden racing Supercross Futures last year, and then watching you guys together this week, and to me your whoop speed has been incredible. For basically only having 3 days on the bike, to be able to tackle the whoops, which like Scott was mentioning, the start, in my opinion, in the 250 class, start and whoops are the separator.
Absolutely.
But before you even get a gate drop, you've obviously have way more experience than this young man. Is there any advice you can give to him as far as like getting a qualifying lap time?
Ooh,
because that's a chess game.
Well, you want to
itself.
latch on. I know you want to. My thing, especially, I think is going to be latching on to somebody that I know is going to put.
So you've already thought about this.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but you just can't go out there and wait until the last lap to try and put your burner in, because you get somebody rolling a jump and then you're done.
Or a red cross flag.
The other funny advantage that I found I have is like I almost like I feel like I figured tracks out pretty quick, honestly. And like honestly, sometimes I get
Well, that's something you're going to have to do in Supercross, bud.
but like I feel like I don't think about it as much.
Quick.
I don't think about what I'm doing as much on the bike when I'm first going out there, because the only thing I can think about is the track. So I feel like I ride pretty well when I don't have a lot of time on a track. Like even this past Monday, like I was talking about, I got on that Supercross track and like I felt like I could have done a lot more a lot sooner, but I knew I was smart about it and I didn't try to push it.
Right.
Because I didn't want to get hurt, or anything like that. But
Well, and that's
I felt like I was like, man, like, okay, I know, like, I can do this. I can do this. I didn't do a lot of the stuff that I took it very linear and very just, got one step at a time. But I felt like it was in there. And even Tyler Bowers, he was my coach at Sandbox, and I'm hoping to work with him a little bit more. But everybody knows Tyler. He's a legit dude on Supercross for many years. And
yeah, he's been on the show before. Good,
Yep.
Good friend of the show.
And Tyler has mentioned that he thinks I have a little bit of a knack for Supercross. Like, it's like just something that's clicked a little bit for me. So, like, I'm just excited to, like, keep getting better. And that's another thing. If I can leave next year healthy as well, I feel like that's a rare thing with rookies, is like to not, to take themselves out of it in the first year. So.
Well, I think that's part of the mental side of it, though. And you did a good job this week, transitioning with a whole new team, a whole new bike, whole new gear set, new mechanic, new compound, new facility, new suspension.
Yep.
Everything in your program basically changed in a week.
Yeah.
And to be able to come through what you did, was very impressive. And I think that if you could keep that mentality and understand, somebody that Matt and I have both helped in the past has been Cullen Park.
Yeah.
And I mentioned that he called me at the beginning of the show, but one of the things for him too, and I don't know the exact stats, but Cullen didn't make every single main this year.
Yeah.
And he won the Rookie of the Year award.
Yeah.
That was a great year.
Well, his goal going into the Minneapolis round was to make the night show.
Yeah.
And I think he ended up 15th, which was
In the main?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which was pretty crazy.
Yeah.
But yeah, he didn't know. He's the guy that's on a team on Phoenix Racing Honda and had no clue what to expect and went in there and just tried to play it safe and rode well. So
Yeah. I think everybody's head works differently. Like, I know for a fact that that's how it is. Like, you have certain guys that ride better just pissed off and, like, mad, and they're going to send it. And then you have guys that ride better when they're having fun and having a good time. And I know this year was really good for me because I learned a lot about like the type of person I am, like racing wise. And I think almost lowering my lowering my expectations, or having my expectations lower than even what I maybe think, is good for me, because then when I find myself in a position where I'm exceeding them, I keep going, But if you're in a position where you have an expectation and you're not quite there, and you're in the middle of a moto and you're not, or qualifying and whatever it is, and you look up at the board and you're not where you're supposed to be, I know that could be harder on me than it would be like, oh, I'm going to send it to get where my expectation is.
Yep.
So for me, I know that my brain works better, just kind of not necessarily not setting the bar high, but just being realistic, and then if anything, exceeding those expectations.
Yeah, I think you've got realistic expectations.
Yeah, I do too. I don't think I'm doing anything or thinking of anything crazy or out of the box.
I would say that going like into your first races, like I would, like, for me, the biggest thing that I always thought, and it's something that I have to remind myself of even after doing it a little bit, is like, everybody feels like they got to get that perfect lap. Everyone's like, I'm in qualifying, and like, like I had this lap that was going really good, and then, I made this mistake, and so, I just kind of like relaxed, and then I tried to go on the next lap, and then this happened. Like, no, like, the biggest thing is like, I know that it's something that even I have to focus on, is like, there is no perfect lap. Like, getting that perfect lap is so slim. Like, it like literally almost never happens. There's always something that's gonna put you a little off balance. There's always gonna be something that might tug your front wheel one way. Like, you might hit the whoops and they may not be the best, but if you did really good on the other parts of the track, like, you're still going to be faster. Like, don't have the expectation of having a perfect lap.
That's something I talked about with Burner. Burner and I were talking about it this week, and Michael Byrne with the Moto Blueprint and everything that he does, he's a huge asset to the team and helps us all the time by giving input and everything. But even stuff like at the compound, when it's triple onto the table and then off, you don't even have to really take that risk, right now. You can still set a decent lap time by doubling certain parts of the rhythm section and just hitting the main triples and finish line and, hitting the whoops at a decent pace and still put a good lap time together. Like you don't
about not clipping stuff, and he's like you're better off doing that. You're better off doubling this rhythm perfectly 10 times than
clipping
tripling it once or twice, and then clipping the double 4 times, and then yeah.
Well, and the thing is, like there's obviously in that track, which without people being able to see, it's kind of difficult to explain. But I think there's 6 jumps in a row, 6 singles, and I mean if you really hit the outside of the corner well, you can 3-3. But at the same time, like he said, I mean, you can go inside and double through it, aggressively, and it's really not that drastic of a difference. Mm-hmm. So, like, even when you go out and you talk about what Scott's mentioning here on your qualifying laps, if you can go get a base rhythm down that has a good base rhythm that you can do quickly, like you get that rhythm down quick at whether it's Houston or Tampa or Daytona, whatever it may be, but you get that base rhythm down, you do that well, you're in. And I think you guys, truthfully, I think you guys will be fine. I don't really think there's going to be much of an issue as far as getting into the actual night show side of things. I mean, I think from there, we know it's tough. There's a lot of good guys on the gate. I'm fully aware of that. I mean, the East Coast is going to be a pretty stacked class, just from the people that it sounds like that are going to be in that coast, which obviously could change all the way up until about the day before A1. So we'll see, but I'm excited. I'm looking forward to it. And also, Scott, too, Matt, we're flying out to Anaheim, too. Cole, Matt, Aiden, Drew, Carson, Chris, myself, we're flying out to A2, so we'll be able to cheer you on from that one. That's the first Triple Crown race of the year.
Listen, I don't even know this. I don't even know which ones are the Triple Crowns. I don't know any of that stuff, to be honest. I just know this is actually going to be my first ever A1, which is really cool.
Yep.
And I've heard is like a cool experience. But honestly, I feel like racing before and doing Supercrosses before is going to help, like, take that sense of it being like, oh my God, first A1, first race of the season, like, and kind of tame that down a lot.
Yeah.
And, for me, like, I can handle that kind of stuff mentally pretty well. And even like Cole said, like, understanding who you are, understanding how you are, understanding your nature, as a racer is super important. I feel like that's something that I've worked on a lot, and that's something that I've understood a lot. You get your routine, you figure out what works for you, and I'm really excited to be able to do the full series. I mean, I feel like the more that I race, obviously the better that I get. The more that I'm out there, the further into the season it gets. While some guys are starting to get tired and they start kind of wearing off a little bit, honestly, for me, I feel like I just get stronger and stronger and stronger. I get better. I get, a little bit sharper on some things. I start to understand things a little bit better. And if there's things that I'm struggling with, I start to tackle them. So I'm excited, and I'm definitely excited for you guys to be out there and, definitely look to, really make sure that we put in some good races, get good races, good points, and, just focus on the long-term goal. But, all in all, don't, that's the big thing for me is I want to make sure that I don't like fixate on my end goal, my big goal so much that I like take away from the small moments. You have to approach each round, as an individual, as a thing of building up to your big goal. So that's going to be the big thing, and just kind of making sure that be consistent, stay healthy, and that's about it.
It's important that you don't like get discouraged, right? Like the first few
rounds.
Oh,
that's huge. Like even if you go into it and like you don't like, it's good going in with no expectations, because that is a lot of times how you exceed whatever you thought you were even going to accomplish in the first place. But like if you go in and you don't quite meet what you think that you can do, and like a big thing is like comparing yourself to like other guys that you've raced before, and you're like, well, dude, I was literally like destroying this guy at Minios, or I was literally right on this guy's coattails at Minios, and then he goes and is qualifying like 22nd, and I'm like just shy of making it in. Like, you cannot be discouraged by that kind of stuff. Like, you have to approach it as a thing of just focusing on yourself, focusing on what you know that you can do, focusing on the things that you know you're good at,
and just learning.
And just learning. That's the biggest thing, is being able to pick up on stuff, and at Supercross it's a bit different. I mean, it's intense. There's a lot of people in a really small area. There's not a lot of room for people to, there's not a lot of room to navigate, but it's it's something that you learn, you pick up on really quick, like how to approach the different obstacles, because what you ride at Sandbox or what you ride at the compound or at any facility, it's all going to be completely different compared to once you go to the actual race. There's nothing like the actual race. But if you pick up on stuff pretty quickly, it'll come to you. But that's something that I know that I've learned a lot with Supercross is you just, some things you just got to let it come to you. Like you cannot force the issue. There's some things that you just kind of have to kind of learn, and you have to embrace whatever it is. It's kind of counterintuitive because you feel like you always got to push the envelope and you always got to be, being the best, and you got to hit it the hardest. It's not always the case. Like you got to learn the stuff as it comes. You got to figure out, you got to watch. For me, I'm a very visual guy, so like being able to see 250A group and then hustling my freaking butt back to the pit, for being in 450B group, unfortunately, and being able to see what they're doing and be able to watch and visualize and see what they're doing and seeing what they're doing differently is huge. But just being able to be on the track, and the more that you're on the track, the more you'll learn, the more that you'll just absorb it. So the biggest thing is to just be patient. Like be patient with yourself, like going in with not expecting so much of yourself is a really good thing, but also, being confident in what you can do. Yeah. And as the track comes to you and as you get the experience with it, it'll just come. It just comes to you, and you slowly build. It's something, and some people build faster than others. Some people start at different places than others. It's all different. So it's
at least one of the good thing is though is that we get people like this in our corner now.
Yeah.
True.
That's one good thing about having the podcast and the people that we've had on here. We've had some big name guys on here, and we have the ability now to be at a race and then go talk to them. Talk to each of them and say, hey, what do you think? Get your experience. I mean, I think
perspective is everything, man.
We were at Atlanta.
I like that we're going to A2 because I'm going to be there trying to put myself on the track while I'm watching, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Well,
and then too, I think it was last year at Atlanta Supercross where you came up to Aiden and was giving him some type of pointers, when we were in the,
in the garage.
Yeah. In the garage.
Yeah. Talking about the rhythms.
Yeah.
Cause I remember that he was saying about the rhythms and it just being a lot. And I'm like, dude, like cause there's so much room and like trying to time it. And I'm like, dude, like you need to relax on this track. Like it's so fast that you have to relax. Like it's not like a normal Supercross track where on a 250 you kind of got to hammer it.
Right.
Like I remember saying to him, like, dude, you just need to take a chill pill.
Yeah.
Like you just breathe.
I feel like we tell him that all the time.
Just literally just go out there and relax.
I have that conversation with him daily.
Yeah. I'm like, dude, you just need. I remember that like literally, and I was like,
I don't think
you gotta. Yeah, like you just gotta let it come to you. You gotta let it come to you. You gotta relax. You gotta let it do what it's gonna do. You can't force the bike to do this. You can't force the bike to be on the track like this. The track is slick, so if the bike's gonna take you somewhere, you gotta kind of.
Supercross.
Say again?
Flow is huge on Supercross. Just like letting it just.
Yeah, I mean, you want to be in control and you want to be commanding on the bike, but you don't want to be so fixated on controlling every little thing that you tighten up. Yeah. There's some things that you just got to let happen,
Well, it's going to be interesting to see. We get to see the Scott Meshey, the 411. So we're going to get the 411 on the 411.
That's right.
Round 1, Anaheim, A1 is January 7th, 2023. Gate drops at 7 p.m. That'll be streaming on Peacock. And then, obviously, you're going to go through all the rounds on the 450.
Absolutely.
We're going to get to see Mr. Cole Bradford. We will announce the new number, the Pro Cole Bradford number for you, and then also a brand new number coming out for Aiden Shive. Also, something, you guys have been the same number for a long time. So we'll announce those, but you guys are going to hit the track once the series goes east, which is technically February 4th at Houston at the NRG Stadium. Again, gate drop there is going to be prime time, 7 p.m. on the Peacock streaming and TV apps. And then for you will actually go Houston, Tampa, and then back to Texas, which is technically Arlington, Dallas, but that's going to be your first Triple Crown race.
Oh, is it really?
Yeah, Dallas. And then after Dallas, we come back home to Florida and we go to Daytona. So we go Texas, Florida, Texas, Florida.
I want to get the night show on that so bad.
Oh, you will.
Yeah.
You better do it.
You mean on that Triple Crown?
Yeah. They're harder, I know, but like, right? Not to make the night show, it's a little harder because you don't have,
It
It's
kinda
all through
works.
qualifying.
it's only
kind of
top
works.
22 in qualifying, right?
Not exactly. You have your top. What is it? It's top 18 that
They
go.
run an LCQ.
Yeah, top 18 go straight to the main event, to your Triple Crown. But then 19 through whatever it is, 19 through 39 or 19 through 40 or whatever,
Yeah.
then go on the LCQ gate. So,
How many go out of the LCQ, do you know?
4.
4.
Yeah. So your top 18 go,
And-
and then you have 4 that go through the LCQ, and it's a 22-man game.
And listen, I'm going to give you this
Start
piece
going.
of advice. If you find yourself in the night show and you get yourself a good start in the LCQ, don't be the 4th guy.
Yeah.
yeah.
Don't be the 4th guy.
Yeah, you got to
don't
turn it on your back.
I was
Yeah.
gonna say, don't
get,
be the
get to third
Yeah,
at all costs.
get to
That
third
one's
or second.
That one's always
That's
Dude, I feel
that's
like-
way more aggressive.
Yeah.
Sometimes third and second aren't even like some dudes. You're watching it and you're like, dude, just be smart, and they do.
Yeah.
Not. They do not.
Yeah,
It's
third
like,
and
dude, you're in
second is a little more. I feel like second is probably the most safe spot.
Yeah.
Because nobody wants to be in 4th. Everybody wants to be in 3rd, and then everybody in 5th wants to be in 4th. So
I don't want to be in 4th, but I'll take 4th and I'll go through.
Hey, listen. You know what? If that's what gets you,
I
in
like your
4th, then-
attitude.
Yeah. Like,
If it gets you in,
You're not even going to have to worry about LCQs, man.
I'm going straight
There you
through.
go.
You're going straight out of the heats, man. We're not even worried about that.
Yep.
Well, Mr. Scott Meshey, I greatly appreciate you having on the show. Mr. Matt Bell, HBI Tax and HBI Racing. We talked about some of the tax stuff today. If anybody wants to reach out, you could do that. Feel free to come through our platforms. We can get you in contact with him. But even if you want to go to him directly, you can do that. Their website, hbitax.com, multiple locations in Florida. Cole Bradford, thank you for making the trip up here today to the Legends Room and Sugar Shane.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Another episode down, episode number 13.
Yeah, dude, it's been a good one.
Yeah, it's a long one.
A lot of-
I
was
think
it-
that is.
lot of-
I
lot
think
of
that is
info-
actually the record for the
A
longest.
lot of
podcast we've
information
had
being
so far.
passed around here.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for
That's some
having
big
me.
announcements. So
Yeah, we got a lot of stuff, and we've got some big names coming in even next week on episode number 14, right here before we start the Supercross season. So we got some heavy hitters coming in. We're looking forward to that. And, again, as always, we try and say it on every episode. Make sure you're subscribing to us on our YouTube channel. Make sure you're liking and following and sharing. That's the biggest way to get our podcast and our message across of what we're trying to do is please share, subscribe, like, follow, all that jazz to get this, content and the word out there of what we're trying to do. And we greatly appreciate everybody for listening to us. And we've got more stuff coming here in the next couple episodes. And then, hey, time to go pro racing.
That's right.
yeah.
Should I start TikTok?
I think we're about ready for you to hit it, Shane.
Is it the blue button, boys?
Yeah.
Good time.
Hit it.
All right, see you, boys.
See you guys.